Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Became the Captain America? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Nothing burns like the cold. George R.R. Martin. Arctic Circle, Greenland, November 2195. Even in a world full of superpowers, the cold could be deadly. Though there were some exceptions with certain individuals, humanity's aversion to settling in the far north and south only proved the rule that the cold was not to be trifled with. The wind howled across the dark frozen landscape, carrying a blanket of white with it. The sun was less and less noticeable in the skies lately, signaling the beginning of the Arctic winter. The merciless ice was starting its yearly campaign to reclaim its lost territory from spring. A seemingly endless cycle of thaw and freeze. This battle was suddenly interrupted by an Arctic vehicle driving across the icy surface. It was a heavy-duty, black truck equipped with caterpillar tracks to provide better traction. The headlights on the front and roof shone through the whiteness yet provided limited visibility. The two occupants inside were grateful the GPS was still functioning. Moments later, the occupants spotted a faint red light peeking out of the driving snow. As they drove closer, they recognized a person holding a long pole with a glowing red beacon on top, waving their arm out to them. The truck slowed down before finally parking a couple of meters in front of the signal bearer. The front two doors opened as the occupants stepped out and into the blizzard. To avoid the frigid air's deadly bite, they wore thick Arctic jackets, insulated pants, and snow boots. The duo carefully ambled to the equally dressed signal bearer. "You the guys from Washington?" the signal bearer asked. "You get many other visitors out here?" the driver quipped. "How long have you been on site?" the passenger inquired, getting straight to business. "Since this morning." The trio proceeded to walk together. "An oil crew called it in 18 hours ago. How come nobody spotted it before?" "It's not surprising. This landscape is changing all the time. Hardly anyone comes out here anyway," he answered, still holding the beacon pole. "Any idea what this thing is?" "No clue. Probably just a weather balloon." More red beacons could be seen bleeding through the snowstorm. Other people could be seen moving in close proximity to the lights. "No way," he quickly dismissed. "Yeah, no, we don't have the equipment for a job like this." A dark object was slowly becoming visible amongst the beacons. "How long before we can start craning it out?" the driver asked. "I don't think you understand. Unless All Might tagged along with you, you're gonna need one hell of a crane." Walking closer, the dark object was revealed to be a huge piece of metal protruding out of the ice. A group of people were carefully walking around it and placing beacons around it. A man was atop the large structure, 5 meters in the air, shining a bright flashlight as he examined it. At first glance, it looked like the tip of an airplane wing. The Washington men were speechless. Through the blizzard, they could see the marker lights the crew had placed stretched out far into the snowy blanket. Whatever this object was, it was definitely not a weather balloon. Looked like it was time to get to work. Half an hour later, after talking with the on-site crew, the Washington men had a clearer picture of what the structure was. The size and shape were indicative of an aircraft of sorts, given its boomerang shape. As for the when, what, who, why, and how for the unknown craft's presence here, that was up to them to find out. As SHIELD agents, the special training they had received helped prepare them for investigative missions like this. The truck passenger from earlier was kneeling to the ground. His right glove was taken off, revealing his lighter-skinned hand, as brilliant green laser beams fired from his fingertips. With superb concentration and good control, he was able to cut a clean yet imperfect circle into the aircraft's hull. The hunk of metal finally broke free and fell, making a loud clang sound as it hit the floor beneath. The agent stopped firing the lasers and grimaced, swiftly putting his glove back on to prevent frostbite. "Smith, you okay?" the driver asked out of concern. "Why, fine." The revealed Agent Smith answered, biting his cheek as he felt the pain slowly reside. "Been a while since I used my quirk like that." A few crew members rolled a small crane into view, carefully positioning it over the hole. "Still not bad." I'm curious, with a quirk like that, why didn't you become a hero? He chuckled ruefully. It's not much of a heroic quirk. Can only use it for 10 minutes out of the day. Any more and my fingers would be unusable, could even burn them off. He turned to him. Now that wouldn't be ideal, would it, Williams? The driver, Agent Williams, visibly cringed at the imagery. Sorry about that. He shrugged it off in a nonchalant manner. Don't be. It's fine. Most kids dream of being heroes, but only a blessed handful can achieve that. Rest of us just gotta make do with what we got, ya know. Agent Williams nodded in understanding. As a quirkless man, the hero profession was completely off the table for him. Nevertheless, he was thankful to have this job, seeing it as the next best thing, even if it could get wearisome some days. Today was thankfully not one of those days. After all, it's not every day you get to investigate an unknown flying object, UFO. Or at least a former UFO. Hopefully there aren't any probes inside. He internally mused. The two agents ambled to their vehicle that had been pulled up closer to the extraction zone. Their equipment was stored in freeze-resistant cases in the back bed. They carefully retrieved it and got to work placing it on them. All right, the crane's all set. One of the researchers shouted. You guys ready? The agents stepped forward with their furred hoods pulled back, wearing fully sealed high-tech helmets with clear visors, breathing apparatus, communication system, LED lights, and camera. Strapped on their backs were protected oxygen canisters. It was unclear what was inside the craft, so precautions had to be taken. Doing a quick radio test, confirming their communications worked, the agents confirmed they were ready. Moments later, with the mechanical whirring sounds of the crane in the background, Agent Smith was steadily lowered into the aircraft by a cable and an LED flashlight strapped to his waist. Snow flurries gently fell and accumulated on the floor. Bright light from above shone down from the hole, illuminating the innards of the craft for the first time in a long while. As soon as Agent Smith's feet touched the grated floor, he unclipped from the HRS. Agent Williams was already inside, shining his flashlight around them. The air inside was stale and frigid, with the only circulation coming from the hole in the roof. The metal walls and floors around them were lined with layers of ice. Breaches in the hull were also visible. Base, we're in. Agent Williams notified through his comm. Copy that. The two agents carefully proceeded down a graded walkway with handrails, shining the light wherever they could. The sounds of their footsteps on the graded path echoed throughout the craft. Untrained normal people would feel uneasy in this situation, but the two agents using their past training steeled themselves. Closely examining their surroundings, they noticed lining both sides of the path were stacks of dull, gray cylindrical casings with attached fins at the ends, hanging from support carriers to which were attached to the ceiling supports. There had to have been hundreds. What is all this? Agent Smith wondered. They came across an intersection connecting to a perpendicular walkway. On it, they spotted one of the casings lying on the grate. Agent Williams carefully approached the object and kneeled by it, shining his flashlight over it. His eyes widened slightly in recognition. Bombs. If that's the case, don't get too close. Smith urgently exclaimed. Could trigger an explosion. Williams then noticed something emblazoned on the bomb's shell. Actually, I don't think these are the exploding type. Look. He pointed his light at the shell, revealing a biohazard symbol. Chemical weapons. Agent Smith turned his light around and noticed the same symbol printed on all the other bombs in view. Think this could have been from the Third War? Maybe. Looks like a 21st century bomber, kind of. Williams stood up, his eyes catching a glimpse of more bombs lying below the graded pathway on the aircraft's bottom hull. Looked like they fell off during the landing. Though that begs the question, whose bomber was this? And what the hell is it doing all the way out here? That's two questions, but Smith looked ahead and saw an open hatch door at the end of the path. We may find answers in there. The agents cautiously proceeded forward and stepped through the hatch. The other side was a seemingly large open area with angular support columns. At the far end was a large, graded windshield that would have provided the pilot an excellent view. The cockpit. An unusually large one at that. The agents stepped down a small flight of steps onto the floor. The cockpit was in very rough shape. Breaches in the hull were prevalent with the support skeleton bent and broken in various areas. Layers of ice had leaked in and seemingly filled most of the cockpit's empty spaces. Looking ahead toward the big, broken windshield, they spotted what appeared to be smashed control panels and the pilot's seat. No sign of human remains. Agent Smith noted, "Maybe they ejected before the crash?" "Maybe." Agent Williams pointed his light around the control area and revealed a sizable chunk of ice around the pilot's chair that extended to the rest of the ice in the room. Not seeing anything that resembled a human body, he was about to look away until catching a faint gleam of something. "Wait." Williams squinted his eyes. He focused his attention on the area around the chair. He could have sworn he caught a glimpse of colors aside from the gunmetal gray and icy white that had mostly dominated his vision. Sauntering forward, he kneeled by the ice, whipping away a thin layer of frost. The agent gasped as his eyes widened. "No, it can't be." "Smith," he called out. Agent Smith turned and walked up to his field partner, wondering what he found. Pointing his light at the ice, his own eyes widened in shocked disbelief. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Williams asked, trying to confirm his vision was correct. "My God." Smith activated his comlink. "Base, give me a line straight to the director." "Sir, it's 3 a.m. where he is," the man on the radio responded. "I don't care what time it is." Smith retorted, "This one's waited long enough." The object in question was a 26-inch wide, metal disc with a 5-pointed white star at the center in a blue circle. Surrounding that were 3 concentric circles colored red, white, and red respectively. A relic from a bygone era. "Our dreams make us large." Jack Kirby. Mizudafu, Japan, April 21, 96. It was a sunny afternoon in Mizudafu, a respectable-sized city in Japan's Shizuoka prefecture. People of all shapes and sizes, some even appearing to be amalgamations of animals and seemingly other random things, were going about their business. The city's peace was suddenly disturbed when the ground began to rumble, followed by loud crashing sounds. As some people turned in the direction of the commotion in the distance, a young man swiftly sprinted past them, quickly shouting his apologies for bumping into them. He was well above average in height for a Japanese man, standing at 189 centimeters, 6 feet 2 inches, and appeared to be quite muscular, although his modest attire concealed most of it. He had a mop of dark green, curly hair with freckles dotting a well-defined, mature face and bright emerald eyes shining with excitement. The young man's attire consisted of a dark brown leather jacket with black trim over a green and white plaid button shirt, dark blue jeans, and a pair of red ankle-high boots with black laces and white heels. Strapped to his back was a circular brown leather bag with a black hand handle on top, and a yellow satchel was slung over his right shoulder. Midoriya Izuku couldn't suppress a grin as he continued rushing toward the loud commotion. Skidding around a corner, Midoriya spotted a fairly large crowd gathering outside a nearby train station. Tatooine Station, if he remembered correctly. He immediately spotted a massive man with a monstrous appearance wreaking havoc in the station. "That's one big supervillain," Midoriya excitedly shouted in English. Now, normally Midoriya would feel anything but excited upon seeing a giant monster man rampaging in a populated area. If people's lives were endangered, he'd rush in without a second thought to help. But with trained and authorized professionals already on the scene, he was given a sense of ease. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Midoriya quickly reached into his bag to pull out a notebook and pen, eager to take notes. Analysis of Today's Heroes. Volume 13 was written on the front. Death Arms, the punching hero, rushed in to catch an electrical transmission tower that the villain had broken off in his rampage. With a grunt of exertion, he laid the broken tower onto the street with a loud thud. "Good catch," Midoriya praised, impressed by Death Arms's quick action. "I know catching something that heavy falling from that distance couldn't have been easy. He's definitely strong. Everyone stay back." A pro hero dressed as a firefighter produced a rope of water from his red water faucet arms in front of the spectators. Several police officers were also up front to keep people back. "For your own safety, please stay behind the line." The rescue specialist, Backdraft, Midoriya remembered reading about him online. His quirk was very useful for firefighting and keeping citizens out of danger zones, exactly what he was doing now. He'll keep bystanders at bay while also being available to put out any fires caused by the villain. So why is this guy going full monster in the middle of the city? A civilian in a business suit inquired to a regular-dressed man standing beside him. Just some amateur. Stole someone's bag and got himself cornered. The guy in the suit shook his head, commenting, "A quirk like that and he's just a petty thief? What a waste." I know. It'd be cool to have a quirk like that. Midoriya wasn't quite fluent in his Japanese, but he understood enough of the men's conversation to know the situation. Seriously? That's a shame. What could have happened to force this guy to go down this path? With his ability, he could have done so much good. The verdette started carefully squeezing by people to reach the front of the crowd, overhearing some of them talking on their cell phones that they would be late getting to work or home. Seemed that the occasional villain attack was a common inconvenience amongst the populace these days. Reaching the front, Midoriya's eyes widened in joy when he spotted the new pro-hero Kamui Wood arriving on the scene. Kamui Woods! Midoriya exclaimed in English, quickly turning his notebook to the page where he had notes on the wooden hero. He's a rising star in the pro-hero ranks. An older American-looking gentleman standing next to Midoriya couldn't suppress a light-hearted chuckle at the young man's enthusiasm. He recognized the giddiness in Midoriya's eyes. Definitely a fanboy, he inwardly commented. Midoriya, meanwhile, jotted down a few notes as he witnessed Kamui battle the giant villain. The crowd let out a flurry of cheers, the loudest coming from a group of fangirls as Kamui Wood's arm morphed into over a dozen razor-sharp spears. "Take him down, tree man," the older gentleman shouted in English. "All right." Izuku immediately recognized what attack move Kamui was about to perform after doing some online research on the new hero, and he was thrilled to see it in person. It's his preemptive binding dash. Canyon Cannon. Without warning, the ground trembled once more as a towering woman dashed in and landed a devastating kick in the villain's jaw. He went flying backward and crashed into the railroad track, unconscious. Midoriya's eyes widened in surprise at the giantess, and turned to a blank new page to draw a couple quick sketches of her. She was a voluptuous young woman who had purple eyes with white pupils, with elegantly long eyelashes. She had long, voluminous, creamy blonde hair that reached down to her waist, with two shorter strands curled to frame her face, parted slightly to her left. Her hero costume was composed of a purple and pale tan-colored skin-tight bodysuit, which was accented with orange stripes. The suit also had a pair of purple gloves with orange accents on the edge of the cuff. This design was also shared with her boots, which were cut off at the thigh in a deep V shape. The suit also had three peculiar orange diamond-shaped designs on the purple top that were located under her chest, and she also wore a purple domino mask with horn-like protrusions on the sides. "Today's my debut," she said with a grin while hoisting the villain up by his leg, slapping a series of restraints on him. "Pleased to meet you all. I'm Lady, and you don't have to worry about this bum anymore." She subtly stuck out her rear and winked, practically flashing the crowd. Naturally, many men in the crowd pulled out cameras to take snapshots of the scene, chanting, "Money shot! Money shot!" Though he couldn't suppress a small blush, Midoriya couldn't help but feel vexed with Lady basking in the spotlight. "Come on, that's just unnecessary. You're supposed to be a hero, not a Hollywood actress or something." Midoriya inwardly chided. On a lesser note, he was also a tad annoyed that he didn't get to see Kamui Wood's attack move in person. Oh well, maybe another time. Shrugging it off, he continued writing in his notebook. Several minutes later, more police arrived on the scene and Lady shrunk down to her normal size. She was immediately swarmed by the crowd and various reporters as she handed the villain over to the police. Lady smiled brightly while eagerly answering any questions the reporters had for her, taking the spotlight completely away from Kamui Woods, who was still on top of the train station while looking quite gloomy. Gigantification. Midoriya muttered in English while making several notes next to a simple sketch of Lady. From what I understand, it's a common and quite powerful ability these days. Although the threat to public property might pose an issue, unless she can manipulate her size at will. Still, she certainly has the looks and quirk to be a popular hero. The old man looked at Midoriya with slight surprise. Your English is pretty good. You from around here, or are you studying abroad? He asked. He was a Caucasian man around his late 60s from what Midoriya could tell, standing at 176 centimeters, 5 feet 8 inches. His gray hair was slicked back, showing off a receding hairline. Over his dull blue eyes was a pair of thin-framed glasses. He wore a pair of khaki pants held up by a black belt, a light blue turtleneck sweater with a white collared undershirt, and brown shoes. Oh! Midoriya realized he had slipped back into speaking English, which irritated a few bystanders close by. Why? He sheepishly replied, putting his notebook back in his bag. I guess you could say I'm studying abroad. I was actually born here in Mizudafu but grew up in the States. California, to be specific. No kidding. Queens myself, in case you couldn't tell, the man chuckled as his New York accent was prevalent. Nice to meet ya, Queens. Midoriya held out his hand, which the older American shook firmly. Likewise, Callie, he smirked. So, what brings you to Japan? Midoriya asked, hoping to strike up some small talk. Aside from acquaintances at the community college and at work, he didn't have much going for him in the friends department. The old man smiled roguishly. Oh, mainly here to kick back and enjoy retirement. Also hoping to get some inspiration for a new superhero comic I got ruminating in my head. Midoriya grinned. Japan does have great heroes. I'm sure they can give you plenty of inspiration. Haven't seen much in terms of superhero comics these days. Makes sense, given that this world is practically filled with superheroes and supervillains already. Midoriya thought. Why read a comic when you can just turn on the news or stream YouTube videos? Superhero comics aren't really a big thing anymore though. Midoriya mentioned with a small frown. So it may not get popular. He waved off the concerns. That won't stop me. Our dreams make us big, ya know? Midoriya smiled, admiring the old man's sunny outlook and determination. So, what are you studying abroad for? From all those notes you were taking, it sounds like you're wanting to be a hero yourself, am I right? Midoriya nodded, smiling. That's actually why I'm here. Well, good luck then. He gave Midoriya a thumbs up. Don't know what your quirk is, but it doesn't matter. He paused to look at his wristwatch, his eyes widening when he noticed the time. Well, I better head along now. Don't want to miss my train. Hopefully that giant ruffian didn't destroy the tracks. Goodbye, sir. Nice talking to ya. Midoriya gave him a lazy salute as he walked toward Tatooine Station. Good luck on your comic. Thanks, son. The old man gave him a peace sign. Certainly a mature air around that kid. I'm sure he'll be a great hero. I can feel it. With that, the aspiring comic writer proceeded toward the train station. Good guy. Midoriya began walking in the opposite direction. It'd be faster to take the train to his apartment, but he felt like walking today. He enjoyed walking home most of the time as it allowed him to stretch out his legs and learn the area better. Plus, he was never in a hurry to get back to an empty apartment solely to study and sleep. Stopping with a group of people at a crosswalk, the vedette pulled out his 13th hero analysis notebook. Can't believe I got to see those pro heroes in action today. They were pretty quick to take action. Midoriya began jotting extra notes on MT Lady and Kamui Wood's pages. Death Arms and Backdraft's profiles were in one of his 12 previous notebooks, Volume 5 and Volume 6, to be more specific, so he'd have to wait to get home and add notes to their respective pages. Still, the lady rushing in the way she did could have ended badly had some civilians or station workers been nearby the tracks. Hopefully she took that into account before making that decision. Given how eager she was to make her debut though, he doubted that was the case. Midoriya wasn't personally angry with MT Lady as he understood why she did it. Pro heroes were government workers and had the potential to earn higher wages, fame, and glory depending on their performance. Basically, the more popular you are and the more villains you capture, the more money you make. Midoriya mentally sighed. Sounds good on paper and all, to reward heroes like that, but that does potentially lead to other issues. The crosswalk light turned green, and Midoriya with the rest of the crowd proceeded across the street. He opted to take a longer route back to his apartment complex, not really in a rush. He furiously scribbled down notes, enraptured in his own world, which weirded out some passing bystanders. After jotting down as many notes as he could on Kamui Woods and MP Lady, he placed his notebook and pen back into his yellow satchel. Several high school students wearing black Gakurin uniforms walked past him until he realized he was walking in front of a high school. The words, Jaka High, were inscribed on a plaque on the school's brick entrance gate. Guess school must have just let out? Glancing at his green army wristwatch, he confirmed it was indeed past 1500 hours, 3 p.m. Making sure to step to the side to not impede any of the students walking by, Midoriya Izuku took a moment to stare at the school facility. Feels like it was only yesterday. Fresno, California, April 2042. A line of 13 yellow school buses drove down the relatively busy streets of Fresno with Vulcan High School District labeled in black capital letters on both sides and their respective bus number present by the front doors. With all of their designated stops completed, the buses were on their way to the high school building. In bus number 9, the atmosphere of the bus was loud and rowdy, much like the other buses, as students conversed with each other while the bus driver did his best to tune out the noise. Meanwhile, a Japanese-American teen was sitting alone at the front bench seat with his eyes glued on his smartphone. He wore a white t-shirt with black kanji letters for t-shirt emblazoned on the front, baggy brown cargo pants, and a pair of red high tops with white soles and black laces. A yellow backpack was resting in the unoccupied seat to his right. Izuku Midoriya's attention was focused on a national news article with the main headline, Metahuman Riots Continue in Major Cities. Hundreds Dead. Izuku frowned as he read the unsettling reports of people with meta abilities causing havoc. It ranged from petty theft to full-out riots with many people getting hurt or killed. The government was under immense pressure to quell the violence, but they, like the rest of the world, were still debating on how to handle the sudden, unprecedented rise of human meta abilities. Reaching a portion of the article that included a video of one of the riots in LA, Izuku pulled out a black composite notebook from his bag with the title, Meta Abilities Analysis, written on front. Pressing play, the teen watched a shaky cam video of a small group of meta users attacking riot police in LA. Izuku scribbled down the meta abilities he could discern from the poor quality video. He imagined it was taken by a bystander trying to stay out of sight to record the action. Let's see, one guy appears to have the ability to coat his body in stone, granting him enhanced strength and durability. Another has jellyfish-like tentacles for arms and appears to be able to produce bioelectricity. He mumbled, pausing to wince when he saw several SWAT members suffer electrocution from the thug. A third guy? Or maybe a girl? Anyway, they have the body of a humanoid snake and spit acidic venom from their mouth and arms which have snake heads instead of hands. Izuku. Ys Mr. Curtis? Snapped out of his musings, he turned to the Hispanic bus driver who was giving him an irritated look. You were mumbling again, the driver pointed out. Also, we're here. Time to get out. Izuku looked around to see everyone had already disembarked from the bus. Oh, sorry about that. Quickly putting his phone and notebook away, he promptly exited the bus. With the sliding doors closing behind him, Izuku took a brief moment to look at the high school he'd been attending for 4 years. A large, one-story brick building with many windows placed around it. The roof extended upward in the middle to make room for the larger gym. Placed up front near the circular driveway was an illuminated sign with Vulcan High School, Home of the Vultures, inscribed on it. Izuku sighed deeply. Just a few more weeks and it'll be over. Like many high school seniors, Izuku was counting the days and hours until graduation, eager to be done with school life, at least public school life. Swinging his yellow backpack over his shoulder, Izuku was lost in the crowd walking through the front entrance. Nearly everyone towered over him, even most girls, as his own growth had been stunted since middle school, standing at 5'4", 164.5 centimeters. Looks-wise he was quite plain with unkempt, by choice, black hair and brown eyes and a round, freckled face. He had gained his freckles from 15 years of living in sunny California. His high school tenure had been less than ideal, so he was understandably ready to move on to the next stage of his life. Nearly a month remained, so he simply had to bear through it. His first 3-class PRDS of math, art, and science he enjoyed and went by fairly quickly. Lunchtime came and Izuku sat alone at a table in a far corner, eating a homemade bento from his lunchbox. It was quite common for him to eat alone from his peers. Izuku would admit that he could be awkward sometimes, so he didn't hold it against others for being weirded out by his idiosyncrasies. Furthermore, he suspected that his Asian heritage discouraged some people from socializing with him, not that it mattered to Izuku as he didn't see the point in interacting much with people who couldn't look past ethnicity. Finishing his lunch early, Izuku gathered his belongings and headed to the library. The upcoming free PRD gave him the opportunity to unwind and catch up on any reading or assignments. The next 45 minutes or so was spent reading alone at a library table. Izuku was enraptured by an old Japanese book titled The Book of Five Rings. His eyes danced across the English translation pages with fascination. 2 more books were stacked to his right. Art of War by Sun Tzu. Dreams Are Now Reality. An Extensive Guide to the Rise of Superhumans, Volume 3, by Hatsum Teruko, Ph.D. Whoa, nearly 4 centuries later and Miyamoto's wisdom still holds up. Midoriya sounded impressed. Ding, ding, ding. An electronic bell sound emanated from a speaker in the library's ceiling. The same bell resounded throughout the school building to signify the start of another PRD. For Midoriya, it was the start of his least favorite yet most necessary class. For him personally, physical education piece. Gathering the 3 books in his arms, Izuku quickly walked to the librarian's desk to have them checked out. I have to say, Izuku, the middle-aged librarian said while stamping the due dates on labels on the back of various books, I think you've read more books than all the other students in this school combined. I'm sure that's an exaggeration. Izuku tapped his cheek bashfully. It isn't. She quickly refuted. You check out nearly 5 books a week and always return them on time. Good work. I'm sure that extra knowledge will take you far. She gave him a warm, earnest smile. Thank you, he smiled. I appreciate that, Mrs. Davis. Placing the books in his backpack, he rushed out of the library and through the hallway to the gymnasium. The PE instructor, Coach Simon, was serious about punctuality due to being a U.S. Army veteran and wasn't afraid to dish out more exercises on those that were tardy. Although Izuku inwardly admitted he could use the extra workouts, he didn't want them as a punishment. 10 minutes later, Izuku was standing in line with 24 classmates in their respective gym clothes. There wasn't a designated school gym outfit like with Japanese schools. Rather, students were given the freedom to wear their own outfit as long as it followed the school dress code. In Izuku's case, he wore a plain white shirt, blue shorts with a red and white stripe going down both legs, and old black tennis shoes. All right, listen up. Coach Simon shouted. Graduation may be around the corner, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna let you kids slack off. There was a collective groan from the students, with the exception of Izuku. The coach blew into his whistle. Shut it. We're running 10 laps around the gym, 25 push-ups, 25 squats, and then 25 sit-ups. After that, we're playing a couple rounds of dodgeball. He whistled again. Let's go, maggots. With that, the class started their run around the gymnasium with Izuku trailing behind as per usual. After only a couple of laps, Izuku was already sweating heavily and panting hard, an asthma attack overtaking him. Crap. He mentally cursed. I still can't keep up even after doing all the exercises Peg-chan told me to do. Coach Simon noticed Izuku's struggles and quickly ran over to him. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out Izuku's rescue inhaler and handed it to the teen, which he quickly accepted. Taking a couple of deep puffs from the inhaler, Izuku felt relief wash over his body as his bronchial tubes opened back up. Thank you, coach. He breathed out. Take your meds this morning? Coach asked, concerned. Why, yes, sir, Izuku replied. Want to sit this out, Midoriya? The coach already knew what the teen's response would be, but he was obligated to ask though. School policy and all. No. Izuku panted. I have no right, to sit out while everyone else is doing these exercises. I can do it. Catching his breath, Izuku resumed. Running around the gymnasium. Coach Simon couldn't help but smile at Izuku's determination. Love that kid's fortitude. He has a soldier's heart. He then frowned. A demon shame he has all those health issues though. Everyone had finished the required exercises long before Izuku and started playing dodgeball without him. By the time the onyx-haired teen finally finished, he had just enough time to join the last round, only to immediately get pelted in the face with a dodgeball. Note to self. He mentally bemoaned. Need to work on improving reflexes. Coach ended the class 10 minutes early, giving everyone time to take a quick shower before the next PRD. Izuku entered his 7th PRD class, History, with a red throbbing mark on his left cheek. This, of course, earned him a few snickers from his classmates. This was Izuku's least favorite class, not because of the subject, he liked history, but because of the person sitting in front of him. Sup Midori? Zach Powers took his seat at his desk. What happened to you? Zach was your stereotypical high school jock, a talented baseball pitcher to be specific. Vulcan High since its founding could never get to the state championship in baseball, despite having really good players. As soon as Zach started playing freshman year, the coaches noticed his insane arm talent and immediately placed him on the varsity team, surprising many people. However, any worries of starting a freshman pitcher were squashed when he showed his stuff. He was lights out. He went 2 full seasons while only allowing a handful of earned runs, leading Vulcan High to back-to-back state championships. He was the undisputed most popular guy on campus. Worst part was he knew it and fully embraced it. Standing at 5'11", 155.75 centimeters, he was well-defined and trim for an 18-year-old thanks to years of training and great genetics. He had brown hair with a long bang covering his right eye, tan skin, and hazel eyes. Definitely eye candy for the ladies. He wore a red, black, and white Letterman jacket over a plain black t-shirt, blue jeans, and black Converse shoes. Dodgeball? Wish I could have been there, but alas, athletics and all. The baseball team is doing really good. You guys are primed to make another deep playoff run. Izuku stated. States in the bag. Zach confidently replied. Can't wait to get my 3rd ring. He showed off the 2 state champion rings on his left index finger and thumb. I think I'll put it right here. Ha! He jitted while flipping Izuku the bird. Izuku did his best to ignore the rude gesture and continued. Your ERA is in the state's top 3 for the 4th consecutive year. Keep it up and you'll definitely make it to the majors. He was sincere in that assessment. Yeah, I know. Powers smirked, sounding very braggadocios. USC wouldn't have given me a full ride otherwise. By the way, Midori old pal, you have my homework. He glanced back with a roguish grin. Come on Powers. Izuku bemoaned. I know you're busy with training and all, but this is cheating. You should do the work on your dash. Do you have it? Zach gained a serious edge in his voice. Izuku sighed deeply and pulled out 2 papers from his bag. I tried to match your handwriting as best as I could. Also, I didn't answer every question correctly to ward off suspicion from Mr. Nicholas. Zach took the papers and his expression immediately lightened up. Thanks, pal. You're a true friend. Sure. Izuku knew better. Zach was not his friend, at least not anymore. Even though they got along quite well as children, that had all changed when his natural athleticism bloomed into existence, specifically his throwing ability. Upon excelling in baseball in middle school and now high school, he had left Izuku in the dust to join the cool crowd. Couldn't let Izuku Midoriya, the weakest and most awkward kid in school, taint his image after all. Despite all that, Izuku Midoriya didn't hold a grudge against his former childhood friend. He wished him all the best in his future endeavors and hoped he excelled in baseball. Although, deep down, he'd be completely satisfied with never seeing him again after graduation. The middle of history class was interrupted by the school's daily announcements. Part of the announcements included the daily Pledge of Allegiance to the American and California state flags, respectively. While pronouncing the allegiance by memory, Izuku noticed Zach wasn't saying the right words. He was essentially being an immature child mismatching words to make it sound funny. Now, Izuku could tolerate many things, but this was not one of them. Zack, show some respect, Izuku said angrily after the pledges concluded. People died for that flag. Least you can do is say the pledge. Huh. Zack looked back, ping a brow. The little Jap is seriously gonna talk to me about the flag? Mr. Midoriya does raise a valid point, Mr. Powers. The history teacher, Mr. Nicholas, spoke up. It's school policy to have pledges every day. Students do have the right to not participate, however. Mocking the pledge is unacceptable. Also, he shot the jock a serious glare, making him temporarily freeze up. Derogatory terms will not be tolerated in my classroom. Opening a cabinet in his desk, he reached inside it to pull out a yellow paper slip. Take this note and head to the principal's office, Mr. Powers. That was strike 2. Come on, Mr. Nicholas, any hope the school's ace had to charm his way out of trouble was ended when the teacher held out his hand. Unlike the rest of the school staff members, Mr. Nicholas would not tolerate Zack's bullcrap, star athlete or not. Don't go, or it'll be strike 3. I'll ensure you miss the rest of the baseball season due to misconduct, and forcing your peers to write assignments for you. A fearsome glare was present in the man's glasses. In words you can understand, you'll be out. Zack and Izuku both froze while the rest of the class watched with varied expressions. Some were in amusement at seeing Zack get taken down a peg while others were surprised in general. Zack remained silent and calmly walked up to take the slip and head to the door. Before he exited the classroom, he shot a brief glare in Izuku's direction. Oh. Izuku gulped. After finishing history and his last PRD, English, the final bell had rung. Izuku had hoped to make it to the bus before Zack caught him, but sadly fate was not kind to him today. It hardly ever was. Zack had been waiting for him behind a corner and, with an arm resting over Izuku's shoulder, led him out of the building. He wore a friendly smile to ward off any suspicion from others, but Izuku knew it was forced. He could feel the menacing intent gushing off him. This wouldn't end well. Moments later, in an empty alleyway near the school, Izuku stumbled into a trash can and fell to the ground with another red mark on his face. Zack shook the hand he used to punch Izuku, glaring daggers at him. Contrary to what you may think, I don't like doing this, Midori. Could have fooled me. Izuku groaned, weakly pushing himself back up. You embarrassed me. What's worse, you gave me my second strike. I can't afford to miss the season. You know that. Not when I'm so close to making history. You did that to yourself. As Izuku stood up, he noticed the metal trash can lid off to the side and scooped it up. You didn't have to disrespect the pledges like that. He held the lid in front of him like a shield. Yeah. What's it to you? Zack reached and pulled the metal lid out of Izuku's grasp, throwing it off to the side. He then socked Izuku with a right hook, causing him to stumble into some gross, greasy trash bags lying next to a dumpster. My great-grandfather fought Japs in World War II. Gave his life in the Battle of Okinawa. Zack glowered at his victim. Who are you to talk to me about being patriotic? Izuku shakily returned to his feet, getting in a boxer's stance with his fists clenched. I'm just as much American as you are, Powers. He panted heavily. Zack sneered. Still standing? You never were good at giving up, were you? No. Despite his body quaking in fear and pain, Izuku directed a determined glare at Zack. I can do this all day. Zack was momentarily taken aback by Izuku's sheer tenacity, but then scoffed. You Japs just don't know when to surrender. Izuku threw a right haymaker up at Zack, but the pitcher easily caught it and countered with a strong punch to the face. Izuku collapsed into the trash bags with a pained Hey! A sharp feminine voice called out. Knock it off. Zack turned to the source of the voice standing a couple meters behind him. She was a young woman, a year or two older than Zack and Izuku, of Japanese descent, standing at 5'9", 175 centimeters, with glossy black hair tied up into a bun. She had smooth porcelain skin, gray scara, eye color, and subtle lips. She wore a United States Marine Corps dress uniform, the USMC blue dress Delta outfit, To be specific, it consisted of a khaki short-sleeved shirt, blue trousers with red stripes racing down the sides and a brown belt, and black dress shoes. To top it off, she wore a USMC white peaked cap. Her short sleeves revealed her muscled, toned arms, and Zack suspected the rest of her body was toned as well, given her job occupation. Not the same uniform as described, but here's what Peggy looks like. Voice actress, Wendy Lee. Yamamoto? What are you doing here? Zack roughly demanded. I thought you left town last year. Step aside, Powers. The USMC woman, Yamamoto, ordered. Or I'll make you. A Marine now, huh? Wow. Zack couldn't suppress a snort. Didn't know the Marines accepted women. Are they desperate? Yamamoto resisted the urge to roll her eyes. She had heard it all before, so it was easy to tune out the noise. Wanna find out how desperate they are? She challenged, narrowing her eyes. Zack visibly flinched. He knew he was strong, but trying to fight an active USMC member, woman or not, would definitely not end well for him, especially since it was Yamamoto. With first-hand experience from their childhood, he knew she was absolutely ruthless in a fight. Even in the ones where he had technically won, he didn't walk away without some painful bruises. On another and more important note, he couldn't risk losing his USC baseball scholarship if news got out that he had tried to fight a Marine. A woman at that. He wasn't that stupid. Fine, whatever. Resting his hands in his jacket pocket, he ambled past Yamamoto, refusing to make eye contact. Let me make something clear, Yamamoto firmly said. Don't you dare touch Izuku again. If you do, she reached up to her chest pocket and pulled out her smartphone, revealing the screen to him. You can forget about making the majors, or even some crappy AAA affiliate for that matter. Comprend? Her glare hardened. Zack's face instantly went pale from the content on the screen, and gasped, She recorded everything? SHT. He mentally cursed. Yeah, I get it, ma'am. With no choice but to comply, Zack sauntered off back to school, the baseball field specifically, proverbial steam billowing off his head. Putting her phone away, Yamamoto rushed to Izuku's side by the trash heap. Hey, Izuku, you alright? She sounded very concerned. Regaining consciousness moments prior, his vision was starting to come back into focus. Hearing the voice of his best friend brought a smile to his face, despite his pained grogginess. Why? He weakly pushed himself off the garbage bags, with Yamamoto aiding him. I had him on the ropes. Yamamoto rolled her eyes playfully. Sure you did. She then gained an apologetic expression. Sorry I didn't step in sooner. Wanted to record him for blackmail. If he has any brain cells in that inflated head, he won't bother you anymore. If he does, don't hesitate to tell me. Izuku nodded in understanding, using his free hand to wipe his nosebleed onto his pants. Guess he was doing laundry tonight. It's okay. Thanks for that. You okay? Just worried. Izuku nodded. I've been through worse. Zack was actually holding back this time. He has been for a while, actually. The Marine woman frowned, feeling her anger boil. Don't you dare try to stick up for him. You know you can end that JRK's future with one phone call, right? And I'm not referring to the bullying part. Izuku knew what his friend was referring to and immediately shook his head. No. I can't do that to him. Or to anyone, for that matter. You and I both know his so-called pitching talent is a meta ability. Yamato bluntly stated. People are just too blinded to see it. Too busy praising him, thinking he's the next Sandy Koufax or whatever. Izuku was beginning to regain his bearings, and stood up unaided. I don't want to ruin his future like that, even if he may deserve it. Besides, it's not like we'll cross paths after graduation anyway. Yamamoto sighed, exasperated. Still too nice for your own good. And you still haven't learned to run away from a fight. Huh, nerd. Izuku smiled at the taller woman. It's good to see you, Peg-chan. Likewise, Izuku-an. Peggy Yamamoto and Izuku both embraced each other in a friendly hug. Past 8 months have been hell. I can imagine. Izuku commented. The Marines never make it easy. No, they do not. Come on, Peggy broke off the hug. I'll take you home since you missed the bus. Thanks. he said appreciatively. Picking up his backpack lying off to the side, Peggy and Izuku both walked out of the dirty alleyway and down the sidewalk. Many vehicles drove down the streets. Notably, there were more police cars patrolling as of late. Some of the buildings Izuku and Peggy passed were taped off with yellow police tape after suffering damage by late-night riots several nights ago. The damages included broken windows, stolen inventory, and various forms of graffiti painted on the buildings. Metas unite. Kill the meta monsters. FTP. Take back the human race. Evolve or die. FTP again? There were more slang words and phrases that included much more colorful language that Izuku didn't want to repeat. He shook his head at the amount of property damage inflicted. He knew some of the shop owners and they didn't deserve to have their businesses destroyed like this. Whether it be from metahuman supporters or anti-metahuman supremacists. Ever since the first metahuman was born in KK City in China 28 years prior, more and more exceptional individuals had been born across the globe. The trend continued to this day and the reasons still remained unclear. Even the world's best geneticists and biologists were stumped and had no answers to this phenomena. So, how do people react when faced with the unknown prospect of a society of metahumans? Quite poorly, actually. Imagine that. Makes you angry, huh? Peggy noticed Izuku staring at the crime scenes. Seeing all this senseless destruction? I am angry, but more disappointed really, Izuku truthfully admitted. This is the time where we should be coming together as a nation. A people. Not fighting each other. Peggy nodded in agreement, but didn't say anything. She honestly didn't want to go off on a tangent talking about society's current woes. She already dealt with enough of it as it is with her job, and would soon have to face it head-on. They soon arrived at a nearby 7-Eleven convenience store, where Peggy's ride, a black Honda Goldwing, was parked out front. As they approached the vehicle, Izuku suddenly noticed something on his friend's left sleeve. An insignia badge with a new rank. You didn't tell me you got promoted to corporal? Izuku exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with surprised excitement. Heh, I was actually planning to surprise you with it earlier. Peggy frowned slightly. Then I came across the scene with you and Powers. That's awesome. You've only been in the Marine Corps for a year and a half, so for them to promote you already must mean you're doing great. Izuku said excitedly. I try not to brag. Peggy turned away with a small tint of red on her cheeks. Pulling off her white barracks cover, she placed it in her bike side saddle to pull out two helmets. One was black and the other was white, and handed the white one to Izuku. I can't wait to get in myself. Izuku placed the white helmet over his head. I enrolled on Wednesday, by the way. Completed the ASFOB and my physical. Should get a response back tonight. Peggy frowned behind her helmet. That's great. She feigned excitement. He's still determined to get in, huh? Should I break it to him, or let him find out for himself? The USMC girl was unsure on how to handle the situation, so she opted to stay silent for now. Taking his seat behind Peggy, she started up the bike and quickly pulled out onto the street. He held on tightly to Peggy's waist. Riding on Peggy's motorcycle was both frightening and exhilarating for Izuku. As the wind blew past him, he took a moment to admire his hometown. It was a warm, sunny day in the San Joaquin Valley city of Fresno. Of course, this was typical weather for the Central California city. Nowhere close in terms of population of its in-state neighbors in Los Angeles and San Francisco, but it was still a respectable size. Peggy weaved in between the modest traffic, clearly enjoying the rush of driving her bike after so long. What brings you back to town, Peg-chan? Izuku yelled over the loud engine and rushing air. Got a week of leave. Came back to spend time with Dad and hang out with you. Peggy grinned. Izuku smiled brightly at that. Peggy had been his best friend growing up. Aside from their Japanese heritage, they shared many things in common, which included their love for old Japanese mecha anime, superheroes, and being raised in a single-parent home. In Peggy's case, it was her dad, as her mom had gotten sick and passed away when she was 3. Both of them had practically been inseparable most of their lives until Peggy graduated and joined the Marine Corps nearly 2 years prior. Another contributing factor to his lackluster time at high school. That'll all change soon. Izuku mentally stated. I'll get into the military. I'll protect and serve people like a hero should. They continued to ride in silence with a cacophony of the motorcycle engine, other vehicles, tires on pavement, and the wind filling their ears. Later, Peggy pulled up into the parking lot of a small, 4-story apartment complex on the edge of town. Parking the bike, Izuku pulled off the helmet and placed it in the bike's side saddle. Thanks for the ride, Peg-chan. Don't mention it, dude. It's Friday night. Wanna hang out tonight? Peggy inquired. Yeah, that sounds fun. Izuku responded happily. He hadn't hung out with his friend in a while and was eager to get out of his stuffy apartment. Oh. Peggy's eyes widened in recollection. Also, there's supposed to be this event going on in San Fran tomorrow night. Has to do with science and all. Would you want to see that? Wait, you mean the Innovation Expo? Izuku's eyes lit up. It's an event where the world's smartest minds come together to show off their inventions. Some of the stuff that's been featured there would have been considered science fiction several decades ago. Of course I want to go. Peggy smiled at Izuku's enthusiasm. Still the same dorky guy. Cool. I'll pick you in 2 hours then. Gotta take a shower, you should too. Izuku stopped and noticed he had grease stains on his clothes and smelled like garbage. No surprise there. Sorry if I got it on you. Trust me, it's fine. You know dirt and grime don't bother me. She waved off. I'll see ya in a bit, Izuku-kun. With that, Peggy pulled out of the parking lot, leaving a skid mark in the pavement. He shook his head, still smiling. That girl? He was happy Peg-chan was back, even if it were just for a week. He proceeded to his apartment complex with an extra pep in his step, only stopping to check the mail at his parcel box. There was only one sealed envelope. Pulling it out, his bright mood was diminished when he saw who it was addressed from. Dad. He already suspected what the contents of the envelope were. He'd been receiving it every 6 months for the last year and a half. Izuku couldn't turn it down though, as much as he'd like to. He needed to pay rent, bills, and other expenditures that minimum wage jobs just wouldn't cover without dropping out of school, which he was not going to do. Thankfully, the cost of living in Fresno was nowhere near as expensive compared to other major cities in California. I appreciate that he wants to financially support me now, but he can at least call me once in a while. Visit me. At least pretend I'm his son. He mentally grumbled. Not wanting to lament on that depressing fact, he placed the envelope in his pocket and continued into the building. After taking the stairs to the 3rd level and nearly triggering another asthma attack, he walked up to his door and unlocked it. He then stepped into a quiet apartment and turned on the lights. It was a small apartment with a living room and kitchen combo, a small corridor with a single bathroom, and 2 separate bedrooms with their own closets. However, only one of the bedrooms was occupied. There was a small 2-seat couch in the living room with a small coffee table and side table, a small stand with a modest-sized television, and a tall shelf full of books. The kitchen was off to the right side and had a small stove, fridge, sink, and a few cabinets. Dropping his backpack to the floor, Izuku headed to the kitchen to grab a frozen bag of peas from the freezer to hold over his bruised face. It wasn't his first rodeo in treating injuries. He'd put some makeup on later to cover them up once he was ready to leave with Peg-chan. After spending time in the trash, he'd definitely need a shower. Izuku dropped to the couch and exhaled deeply, letting his pent-up stress flow out of him. Today, for the most part, had seeked badly till Peg-chan had surprisingly showed up. Getting to hang out with her tonight and attending the Innovation Expo with her in San Francisco tomorrow had certainly brightened his mood. Oh! Izuku suddenly sat up, recalling something important. The recruiter should have called by now. Reaching into his pocket to pull out his phone, he noted there was indeed a missed call and voicemail from the recruiter. According to the timestamp, it looked like he had called Izuku when he was getting his butt kicked by Zack. Please be good news, Izuku wished as he played back the voicemail. Mizudafu, Japan, April 2196. Hey! Green hair! A loud, gruff voice exclaimed. Huh! Midoriya was snapped out of his musings by a loud student. He was a young man standing at 175 centimeters, 5 feet 9 inches, and had a muscular build and lightly tanned skin. He had ash-blonde hair spiked in all directions from his head, and his eyes were sharp and thin, bright red in color. He wore the same black Gakurin uniform as his peers. Judging from his looks, Midoriya guessed he had to be a third year. "The hell are you doing just standing there like a creep?" Bakugo Katsuki demanded. Midoriya was about to refute that claim but realized that he had indeed been standing motionless for a few minutes. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling awkward. "Oh, sorry. Didn't know, going down memory lane." He responded in shaky Japanese. "Doesn't look that much older than me. Pretty sure I would have remembered seeing him. Also, what's up with his accent?" Bakugo ped brow. "What? You used to go here? I don't recognize you." "Oh no. Not there." Midoriya quickly clarified. "But seeing school reminds me of mine. That all." Bakugo narrowed his eyes. It didn't sound like he was lying, but he couldn't be too sure. He wasn't going to tolerate any perverted creeps hanging around campus if he could help it. "Yeah. Word of advice, I wouldn't do that. People get the wrong idea if they see you standing like a jackass in front of a high school." Bakugo curtly pointed out. Midoriya noticed a few high school girls giggling to one another after seeing him and quickly passed by. "Yeah, that's a fair point." He mentally agreed. "Point good. Thanks." Midoriya gave a polite bow. Bakugo momentarily glanced back at the taller dude. He had noticed Midoriya's Japanese sounded kind of off. Also, he started to recognize his accent as Western. Was he a foreigner? "You from around here, green hair?" Bakugo asked. "Born here, but from the States. Still learning Japanese." Midoriya responded, scratching the side of his head bashfully. A stealth gaijin." Bakugo had read about them. People who looked Japanese but were actually foreigners. He turned away with a scoff, not seeing any point in continuing the conversation. "Whatever, extra. Just know, if you're gonna live here, learn to speak our language better." "Why ya?" Midoriya nodded. "Working hard." With that, Bakugo continued down the sidewalk with his bag slung over his shoulder in a nonchalant manner. "What a nice guy, gives me Zack vibes though." Midoriya sardonically thought. But he wasn't entirely wrong. "I should be more mindful." Midoriya continued walking down the sidewalk, going in the perpendicular direction of the blonde guy. The verdette was lost in thought, thinking back to his last days in Fresno. "Can't believe it's really been 154 years since then." Midoriya mentally lamented. He wondered if he should take the advice a couple of his new friends had recently given him regarding taking a trip to the States, visit his hometown and find some closure. However, there was still a lot of work he needed to do, so that was off the table. Also, it was still too soon for him. He just wasn't ready. He arrived at a small pedestrian tunnel that ran underneath a bridge, one he had walked under many times before without incident, still lost in his own musings. Unbeknownst to him, that streak would be broken today. "Hey you!" Midoriya turned around and the color immediately drained from his face. Dark green sludge poured out from a nearby sewer cover, bubbling and shaping itself into a vaguely humanoid shape. A slice of sharp teeth emerged from the muck and a set of menacing yellow eyes bore into him, sending a shiver down Midoriya's spine. He knew he shouldn't judge people by appearances, but everything about the man screamed dangerous. "You seem like a good vessel." "Definitely dangerous." Midoriya immediately started running to put some distance between him and the sludge man. Tossing his yellow satchel to the side, spilling out its contents as a result, he swiftly pulled off the circular leather bag on his back to undo the zipper. Unfortunately, it was too late as he suddenly felt his feet stuck to the ground by the mud. A sense of panic rose within him. The more he struggled, the more the mud rose and, like a snake restricting its prey, the tighter it squeezed him. The mud covered his arms and he was forced to drop the bag to the ground partially open, revealing a red, white, and blue disc inside. As he was about to cry out, the mud man covered his face, cutting off his oxygen supply. "Come on. Don't be shy. Let me in," the sludge chuckled, his voice reverberating in Midoriya's ears. "I just need to hijack your body. It'll only hurt for a moment and it'll all be over soon." He thrashed even harder. "No." Raw fear threatened to overwhelm Midoriya. He couldn't breathe. Agony was erupting in his lungs as he felt bits of the sludge trickling in through his hands. It squirmed around and made him queasy. He could feel it trying to crawl through his mouth and nose. He wanted to vomit, but knew that would make him vulnerable to the villain's meta ability. Not like this. He stared at the bag on the ground, revealing the half-hidden disc. Pekchun. Darkness began to creep over the edges of his vision. Was he really going to die here alone? Just as Midoriya felt his consciousness slipping, the nearby sewer cover went flying upward. The sludge villain turned around in shock to see a very large man, standing at a startling 220 centimeters, 7 feet 2 inches, with an equally muscular and well-defined physique. He had chiseled features on his face with a strong jawline, pronounced cheekbones, and bushy eyebrows. He had short blonde hair swept backwards, with 2 distinct tufts sticking up above his head similar to rabbit ears. His strong features cast a dark shadow over his face, hiding his bright blue eyes. He wore a casual outfit that included a white t-shirt, green olive cargo pants, and brown combat boots. In his left hand was a single bag of groceries. Looks like he was off duty. But, as the saying goes, heroes never take a day off. Have no fear, for you are safe. The man's voice was booming and powerful. A strong, beaming smile was plastered on his face. Now that I am here. All Might, the #1 pro, was on the scene. Damn it. You're so persistent. The sludge villain yelled out with rage. He lashed out across the tunnel at All Might with one of his tendrils, slicing through concrete as the hero ducked down to avoid it. The villain's eyes widened in shock as All Might was rushing toward him at an incredible speed. Texas. All Might reared back his right arm, immense power building within him, making the wind swirl around him. As he brought it forward and completed his yell, the wind swirled and fired down the tunnel with hurricane levels of force. Smash! All Might's fist never made contact before the Mudman had been broken apart into hundreds of pieces that splattered across the tunnel, absorbing nearly all the force of the wind. Midoriya, now released, fell to the ground. Midoriya, even in his dazed state, recognized the hero by his silhouette under the bridge. All Might? He then fell into unconsciousness. Several moments passed. Feeling light, rapid tapping on his face, Midoriya slowly regained consciousness. His eyes fluttered open as his vision was temporarily bleary. He could tell that he was lying outside the tunnel as the sun was shining down with a large man standing over him. Remembering who he was, Midoriya tried to sit up but suddenly started coughing. After several rounds of coughing, to which he expelled bits of sludge, he tried to get a hold of his breathing. Are you all right, young man? All Might asked, his beaming smile still present. Why? Midoriya coughed a bit, talking in Japanese. Thank you, All Might. Good to hear. And no need to thank me. All Might replied, his smile still prevalent. I apologize for getting you caught up in my justicing. I'm usually more careful at keeping bystanders safe. But this city's sewer system is pretty difficult to navigate. He placed his right hand over his forehead while admitting his blunder. Midoriya, however, wasn't listening. The shock of his near-death experience kept him immobile. He didn't understand how he was reacting. Midoriya had faced off dangerous people before. Some with very dangerous meta abilities. That ability, though, that quirk as people nowadays call them. He shivered, arms wrapping around himself to stave off full-body tremors. The sense of suffocation via sludge was all too familiar and personal to Midoriya. Flashes of cold and darkness from his last mission filled his mind, making him shudder. All Might noticed Midoriya's distress and looked at him with concern, dropping his smile. Are you sure you're all right, young man? Midoriya brushed his green bangs aside, trying to get a grip on reality once more. Why? That was frightening. He replied shakily. If only I got here sooner, that must have been terrifying. All Might mentally berated himself. That expression. He had seen that expression several times before with trauma victims, particularly veteran pros and retired police officers. However, it could just be conjecture as he wasn't a professional psychologist. All Might was curious yet worried about the young man but thought it'd be best not to pry. Maybe he could try to cheer him up? Well, there's no need to worry anymore. Thanks to you. Emphasizing the last word, All Might pulled out a soda bottle filled with sludge, the villain's eyes floating inside. I've captured the evildoer. Haha. That's good. Ouch. Midoriya's eyes widened as he finally snapped out of his daze. My stuff. Spotting his satchel and leather bag resting by him, he immediately went to pull out his notebook. Please, like to get autograph all? You already signed it? Sure enough, All Might's signature took up an entire page. He swiftly turned back to bow. Thank you much. All Might smiled brightly, happy to see he was okay now, although was it him or did his Japanese sound a little off? Well, no matter. He gave the boy a thumbs up. It's the least I can do. His eyes then traveled to the brown leather case by Midoriya's feet. The number 1 hero had gotten a glimpse of its contents earlier while Midoriya was unconscious. By the way, that's quite the replica you have in there. Looks just like the original. All Might acknowledged, pointing to the circular case. Neat case too. Whyya? Midoriya sheepishly rubbed his neck. I'm big fans, suppose. He paused to pick up the zipped case, placing it on his back once more. Believe what he stood for is timeless, ya know? All Might laughed heartily. I can understand, young man. I'm actually a fan of the captain myself. He was a big inspiration of mine. Midoriya couldn't help but smile. If he didn't have good emotional control, he was positive he'd be tearing up right now. The world symbol of peace actually looked up to Dash. He was snapped out of his musings as All Might turned around. Well, I'd better get this crook to the police station so they can take care of him. He placed the bottle in his pants pocket. Stay out of trouble. See ya around. Wait, going already? Midoriya asked. All Might kneeled to stretch his knees, resting his hands on them as he primed himself for a big jump. Pro heroes are always fighting time as well as villains. Yeah, I guess I can't argue with that. I imagine he's a pretty busy guy, being the number 1 pro in everything. Midoriya internally rationalized. His green eyes widened when he noticed a second plastic bottle filled with sludge lying off to All Might's feet, to which the robust hero seemed completely oblivious toward. Stand back. I'm taking off. He warned. Oh no. He's gonna forget that bottle. I need to warn him. Midoriya rushed forward to scoop up the bottle and dash toward All Might. Wait. All Might launched himself high into the air with an incredible leap, air rushing behind him in his wake. Ha! He felt a considerable weight on his legs. The blonde hero looked down to see Midoriya hanging onto his legs with a very strong hold. Let go. I love my fans, but this is too much. Too high up. Could die if let go. Midoriya shouted incredulously. Oh, that's a good point. He embarrassedly admitted. You forgot other bottle. Ha! Upon seeing the second bottle of sludge clutched in the green-haired boy's right hand, the number 1 pro mentally slapped his face. Damn it! How could I have made such a careless mistake? He admonished himself. Am I getting sloppy or what? I see. Thank you, young man. All Might replied, sounding grateful. Keep your eyes and mouth shut as I find a landing spot. Midoriya immediately acknowledged All Might's request. As All Might scanned the plethora of buildings beneath him, he felt a little blood leak out of the corner of his mouth. Well, crap. Moments later, All Might softly landed on the roof of an office building. He set Midoriya down, who fell to his hands and knees, breathing heavily. That was intense. Midoriya mentally yelled. Haven't felt a rush like that in a while. All Might picked up the second bottle and, without looking, placed it in his other pants pocket, unaware that the other bottle had gone missing. That wasn't a smart move, but I do appreciate your help once again. He then turned, making his way to the building's ledge. Bang on the door a while. Someone'll eventually let you in. See you on the flip side. Midoriya's eyes then widened as a realization struck him. All Might, this world symbol of peace, was standing in front of him. This was the perfect time to ask him an important question. Something he was eager to hear the number 1 hero's stance on. Surely he could spare a moment, could he? Wait. Midoriya called out, returning to his feet. One moment. No. All Might refused. I have no time. Can a quirkless person become a hero? Midoriya shouted out, hoping he used the term for folks without superpowers correctly. All Might stopped dead in his tracks. Want know what you think? Midoriya added. What makes a hero, power or heart? All Might was motionless for a moment before glancing back. Power or heart? He murmured to himself. His eyes then shot open as an all-too-familiar spike of pain struck his body. His time limit was up. No. But now. He crouched over, feeling his strength rapidly decrease. Midoriya continued. But I am quirkless. Professional hero, wannabe. People say not possible. Do not believe that. He continued while looking down at his feet. World believes only power important. But I think heart matters most. What do you say? Midoriya couldn't immediately comprehend what was happening as All Might's body was suddenly shrouded in a cloud of steam. The steam then blew away, revealing an entirely different person. Midoriya's eyes widened in a comical fashion. Standing before him was a very skinny man with angular features, long limbs, and a long neck. He had long, messy blonde hair with 2 strands running down his face and lacked eyebrows as well. He wore All Might's clothes, but they were much baggier, of course. Who are you? Midoriya demanded anxiously while reaching back to his round case. Imposter? The haggard-looking man deeply exhaled in exasperation. I assure you I'm Ald Blalik. He suddenly started coughing up a considerable amount of blood, worrying Midoriya greatly. Hey. All right? He lowered his hand and approached All Might in concern. Imposter or not, he couldn't stand to see someone suffering. Yagi Toshinori wiped the blood off his mouth and sighed, I'm fine. It happens sometimes. Midoriya guided the skinny man to the side, helping him sit down and lean back against the guardrails. Sure not need to call vehicle emergency? Midoriya inquired. He then mentally kicked himself, worrying he didn't phrase that sentence correctly. He was proven correct as Yagi pet a brow, looking at Midoriya strangely. Your Japanese is off. Are you a foreigner, young man? Midoriya nodded, slumping his shoulders in slight embarrassment. Just grew up in States, still learning Japanese. Makes sense now. Yagi cleared his throat and, much to Midoriya's surprise, spoke in fluent English. Okay, how does this sound? You know how to speak English? He asked. Spent time in America when I was younger and learned the language quite well when I was there. Yagi explained. He then closed his eyes and lowered his head, sighing deeply. But that's not important. Understanding what the man meant, Midoriya addressed the elephant in the room. Are you really All Might? Yes, I am. Yagi then looked up at him seriously. Please don't go talking about this online. Keep this secret for me, will ya? Midoriya could hear the desperation in All Might's voice and nodded in affirmation. You can count on me. Nodding, Yagi lifted his shirt and revealed ugly blue and purple scars on his left side. Midoriya blanched at the gruesome injury. Holy crap! What happened to him? Pretty gross, right? Got this in a big fight 5 years back. Yagi explained. My respiratory system was compromised, and I lost my stomach. All the surgeries have worn me out, and nothing can fix it. That's awful. How the heck is he even still alive? Midoriya pondered. He'd be dead if this happened in my time. Wait. A possible explanation then occurred to him. Maybe people with healing-related quirks were able to save him. I can only do hero work for 3 hours a day. Rest of the time, this is what I look like. Yagi further elaborated. That's wow. Midoriya was stunned. He had watched plenty of footage on All Might and had been awed by his raw power and durability. It seemed unnatural, in his opinion, but considering his own origins he had no room to talk. Furthermore, his charisma had greatly impressed Midoriya as well. Midoriya would admit that he most likely would have grown to be a huge All Might fanboy had he lived in this era. Who could have done this kind of damage to him? How'd it happen? Who did this? He questioned. I'd rather not get into that. Yagi hesitantly replied. The world doesn't know about this fight. Did everything I could to keep it a secret. He paused momentarily, adopting a grim look. I'm supposed to be the guy who's always smiling, right? I'm the symbol of peace. People have to believe I'm never afraid. Midoriya looked at Skinny All Might emphatically. In a way, he could understand the pro-hero's plight. He wasn't an invulnerable, godlike figure. Even with his great power, All Might was still only human, and humans, super or not, were not immune to fear and injury, or even death. That smile, it's just a brave face I put on when the pressure is high. Yagi confessed. This job isn't easy. The skeletal man looked at Midoriya with a serious expression. Heart over power? It's a nice, old-fashioned sentiment, but I'm afraid that's just not how the world works. Power is crucial for a pro-hero. They can't do their job without it. So can a quirkless person be a hero? No. Midoriya kept a neutral look, but inwardly flinched. Deep down, he had expected this answer from him. Nevertheless, it didn't make it any easier to hear. I see. He lowered his head in disappointment. With a grunt of exertion, Yagi stood back up. If you want to help people, there are other ways to do it. You can become a police officer, a firefighter, or a doctor. Those are fine professions. He walked to the door across the roof. Before leaving, he metaphorically twisted the knife in the wound by saying, It's okay to dream, young man. Just make sure your dreams are attainable. Realistic. He twisted the knob and, thankfully, the door was actually unlocked. With that, he went through the door and closed it, leaving Midoriya alone on the roof. Yagi felt a sickening knot in his non-existent stomach with that last statement he had made. He certainly admired the young man's ideal of heart over power, and believed heroes certainly needed to have heart, to a degree, but he had learned the hard way that power was important. Villains didn't care how much heart a hero had if they were unable to stop them. Hate to crush the kid's dream like that, but the sooner he accepts reality, the better. Yagi resigned himself, but he still felt like garbage. This job was never easy. As Yagi Tashinori walked down the stairs, he refocused on his task. All right, now let's get you to the station. He just realized the other bottle was gone, the one that had the villain's eyes in it. Where could it have? Boom. He then felt the ground rumble as an explosion could be heard in the distance. Looking out a window, he saw a dark mushroom cloud billowing several blocks away. Oh no! Earlier, back on the roof, Midoriya let out a deep, disappointed exhale. He's not entirely wrong. Still though, saying power is more important than heart? I thought out of all the heroes he'd understand. Midoriya couldn't help but feel let down by the world's symbol of peace. After the research he's done on pro-heroes so far, All Might seemed like someone who'd understand his beliefs on what it means to be a hero. Though after seeing that gruesome injury, the Verdette could understand why he'd think that. Nevertheless, it didn't make it any less disappointing to hear. Taking a seat by the guardrails, Midoriya took the leather case off his back. Unzipping it, he pulled out a metal disc with a white star in the center inside a blue circle surrounded by 3 rings colored red, white, and red respectively. Holding it in both hands, he gazed at the American-themed disc with an introspective expression. I know what I'm capable of. I know I have what it takes. Still though, there's so many powerful heroes in this era, and then there's me. Just a super soldier with a shield. I can't help but wonder, is there really a place for me in this era? He paused to consider a thought. Does the world even need Captain America anymore? Fresno, California, April 2042. A few teardroplets splattered on Izuku's smartphone screen as the USMC recruiter's voicemail concluded. Izuku buried his face in the palm, choking back a few sobs. Don't cry, damn it. Don't cry. He mentally yelled. The recruiter had broken the news. Though he had done exceptionally well on the ASVAB, his physical test had been less than spectacular. Izuku was expecting that result and had hoped he at least did enough to meet the test's minimum requirements. He didn't like settling, not one bit, but fully understood his own physical shortcomings and that he just needed to get his foot in the door. Reality had other ideas, unfortunately. In summary, Due to his physical and medical ailments, he was deemed medically unfit for service in the Marine Corps. It is stated in our nation's Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. It's a nice sentiment, something certainly to uphold in terms of human rights, but in reality, that statement is not the truth. Some people are just born stronger, smarter, gifted, and healthier than others. Izuku wiped the tears out of his eyes. Now what? He glanced at the side table by the couch, which had a framed photo of his mother, Inko, holding him as a young child. There was a cutout slot in the photo where his father used to be. I based my whole future on getting in the armed forces. What do I do now, Mom? Izuku sat in silence, his mind beginning to drift to another time. All right, go Ultraman, a 7-year-old Izuku chanted, engrossed in the television displaying the Japanese sub of the old TV show. Izuku! Inko called from the kitchen. Pause it for a sec. It's time to take your afternoon meds. Okay. Grabbing the remote and pausing his show, little Izuku scampered to the kitchen. His mother was in the process of making dinner while talking on the phone. Asthma, heart arrhythmia, and pernicious anemia? He's only 7, doctor. How could Izuku have this many issues so young? His father and I don't have any of these diseases. Is there anything we can do? I understand. Thank you, doctor. Inko ended the call and let out a deep exhale. Izuku spotted several pills lying on the counter with a big glass of water. After swallowing the pills, an involuntary shiver raced down his spine. He never liked taking them, but his mom told him he needed the medicine to control his asthma and prevent those painful stomach ulcers from returning. He took a big swig of water before turning to his mom, noticing her sad frown. Mom, are you okay? He asked innocently. Inko sniffled and turned to him with a feigned smile. I'm fine, sweetie. You can return to your show. Mommy will have dinner ready in a moment. Izuku could tell she was sad. He could feel it. He wanted to help her, but he wasn't sure how. So, he did the only thing he knew that he could do. Walking up to her, he hugged his mom's waist. I love you, Mommy. Inko smiled warmly and patted his head. I love you too, honey. I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Inko raised a brow, confused. I'm sorry I get sick all the time. I make you worry. Izuku teared up. If it weren't for stupid germs. Oh, Izuku. Inko knelt down and pulled her son into a tight embrace. You don't have to be sorry for anything. It'll get better in time. Trust me. Izuku sniffled. Okay. Just know, no matter what, Mommy will always love you. Inko softly said. Izuku sobbed a little, touched by his mom's words. Always love you too, Mom. I'll try to get better. Hey. Inko moved her fingers through her son's hair. You remember the family motto, right? Izuku nodded. Can you say it? Izuku repeated in Japanese. That's right. Do you know what it means? She asked. He racked his little brain for a moment to remember the lesson. To go plus beyond? Inko chuckled and shook her head. Close. It translates to go further beyond. Doing your best and then some. Go further beyond? Izuku repeated. That's right. Inko smiled determinedly. Even when you think you're beat, even when you get pushed down, you get back up and keep going. Never let others discourage you. You just keep chugging along. You mean, Izuku blinked, like Ultraman? Why yeah. Inko briefly hesitated. Just like Ultraman. I think I get it. Little Izuku then glanced back at the TV, which had the paused frame of Ultraman preparing to battle. Staring at it for a short moment, his eyes then lit up as inspiration struck him. He looked back at his mom with a determined smile. Don't worry, Mom. I'll get better. I'll be stronger when I grow up. I'll work hard. I'll go plus ultra. Plus ultra, huh? Inko couldn't help but giggle. Her son was so adorable. That does have a nice ring to it. Yeah. Izuku cheered while jumping around excitedly. Plus ultra. Plus ultra. Plus ultra. Izuku stood up from the couch and walked over to a decorated table by the wall. On it was a dark green urn with a framed picture of his mother standing by it. "Hey mom, I didn't get in." "It is." Izuku sighed and rubbed his neck. "My ailments aren't as bad as they used to be, but they're still around. Guess the Marines couldn't take a chance on me." He was silent for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "But that won't stop me." He spoke up. "I'll keep training. I'll push myself to the brink and then some." A 16-year-old Izuku walked into the kitchen where his mother was about to get started on dinner. "Mom, you asked me what I wanted to do with my life. Well, I know." "What's that, Izuku?" Inko asked. Izuku then explained to his mom his goal of joining the armed forces and was beginning an exercise and diet regimen to help prepare him. "W. inspired you to do this?" Inko stammered. Does this have to do with Peggy leaving for the Marines soon?" Izuku shook his head. "No. Well, partially. It really just reinforced that I want to help people. With the way the world's going, people need someone to watch out for them. The armed forces are already calling for new recruits. I have no right to ignore that call, Mom." "Izuku, your health issues," she pointed out. "I know, but I think the exercises and diet plan I mentioned can help. I won't be super buff or anything, but I can at least do my best, right?" Izuku hopefully said. Inko looked down with an uncertain frown. "Sweetie, I'll always love and support you, but please don't put all your eggs in that basket." Izuku was a bit heartbroken by his mother's reply. Before he could respond, Inko descended into a coughing fit, trying to hold herself up by the kitchen counter. Izuku quickly rushed to her aid and helped her to a chair. "You okay?" Izuku asked worriedly. "Wait, I'll be fine, sweetie. Just need rest." Izuku, however, looked unconvinced. "I know you said I shouldn't put all my hopes on that, but I'm not giving up. No matter how many times I get pushed down, I'll get back up." Clenching his fists tightly, he adopted a determined expression. Muzutafu, Japan, April 21, 96. Midoriya nodded to himself. "I have to stay true to myself. No matter what," he said resolutely. Boom. A sudden explosion in the distance snapped Midoriya out of his musings. He quickly stood up and lightly gasped at a pillar of black smoke rising in the air. To his estimation, it appeared to be several blocks away. A villain? Immediately, Midoriya placed the disc in the bag, slung it on his back, and headed toward the door. "Gotta make sure people are safe." Racing down several flights of stairs, Midoriya rushed out of the building and down the sidewalk. Several more explosions went off as sirens rang in the distance, prompting the verdette to run even faster. Yagi Tashinori was panting heavily as he ran down the sidewalk as fast as he could, which wasn't very fast. He was then taken aback when the quirkless boy from earlier suddenly dashed past him at car-like speeds. "Huh?" Yagi's eyes widened. "Did he so fast? But how? He said he was quirkless?" Yagi shook that thought aside and refocused on getting to the commotion. Questions for later. Bakugo Katsuki was not having a good day. It had started with the extras from his school being especially pushy, always trying to get him out to the arcades, smoke, and even to the bars to drink and, hopefully, pick up chicks. Idiots. They were never going to get anywhere if they continued doing that crap. He refused to go with them. He couldn't go with them. They'd only be a distraction. He was the smartest kid in his class, but he had to work his butt off studying for UA University's entrance exam and keep up with all his work from Jakuhai as well. Bakugo didn't understand why they couldn't get that through their thick skulls. He finally got them to leave him alone though, at least for today. Then he had a run-in with a stealth gaijin at the school's front gate, staring at the building like a moron. His Japanese definitely needed work too, which had only made that encounter even more frustrating. He promptly left while making a mental note to keep an eye out for the stealth gaijin around campus in case he was actually a creep or stalker. The day got much worse as, on his way home, he was suddenly overwhelmed by some guy made of sludge. Now, he was fighting for his life trying to get the sludge man off him, but to no avail. The explosions from his quirk were causing only property damage and fires around the street. In summary, he'd had better days. "I'm gonna send you back to whatever sewer you crawled out of," Bakugo exclaimed loudly, setting off more explosions across his body. Let me goo-goo. The sludge villain grinned in twisted excitement. I really hit the jackpot with you, kid. With a quirk like yours, I can get my revenge on that All Might. Meanwhile, a crowd was beginning to gather at the end of the street from the commotion. Midoriya slowed down upon approaching the crowd, squeezing his way through people in order to get to the front. He gasped at the destructive scene transpiring. Several buildings were on fire, charred debris was scattered across the street, and smoke choked the air. He was mildly relieved to see several heroes were already on the scene, including Death Arms, Backdraft, and Kamui Woods. Empty Lady was also present, but it appeared she was unable to get closer since she couldn't fit her giant form through a one-lane street without causing property damage. When his attention shifted to the cause of the destruction, his eyes shot open in shock. "Oh no!" he murmured. "That's the same guy who attacked me. That can't be right." All Might captured him. I even gave him back the second bottle. Midoriya thought back to when he and All Might were flying through the air. His expression was filled with dread when he realized what happened. The other bottle must have fallen out when I was holding onto his leg, which means this is my fault. "Why aren't the heroes doing anything?" a civilian asked. "It looks like they met their match, plus the villain captured someone and things aren't looking so good," another civilian responded. "A hostage situation? Oh no, that'll make things worse." Midoriya inwardly dreaded. "I wonder how long they've been in there. How could they survive being suffocated like that? I thought I'd die after like a minute of struggling." The fear from his near-death experience threatened to return, but he suppressed it. He couldn't let his trauma control him, especially now. He cringed at the thought of somebody going through the same traumatic experience, especially since he was partially to blame. "Wait, I'm confused, isn't that the same villain All Might was chasing earlier today?" one civilian asked. "What All Might? No way he lost, where is he? Can someone call him or something?" a young woman asked. "Seriously, why hasn't he shown up to help the heroes?" Yagi had finally arrived and remained at the back of the crowd. He looked down to the ground and clutched his chest in frustration. His time limit was up and there was nothing he could do. He was just a worthless bystander. "I'm worthless," Yagi Tashinori shamefully thought. Pathetic. Midoriya clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, feeling the same shame. "I'm the one to blame. He wasted his energy on me. I should have just let him go and turned that second bottle over to the authorities myself. Damn it, Izuku." The Japanese-American didn't spend long berating himself before he mentally slapped himself, looking forward with a determined glare. "But All Might's out. So who's here? Any lady is unable to get here without causing destruction, putting more lives at risk. That leaves us with Backdraft, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, and several other heroes I'm not familiar with." He gazed at the scene analytically, many scenarios playing out in his head with the current assembled roster of heroes. "Okay, it's tough, but they can make it work with this group. That sludge guy is made of fluid, so perhaps Backdraft can use his water to spray him down and lessen his viscosity if possible. It could also prevent the villain from creating more explosions, at least for a while. Backdraft is currently putting out fires, but as long as the buildings are evacuated, they can afford to let them burn a few more minutes if it means saving the hostage. Firefighters shouldn't take long getting here. Death Arms, meanwhile, can keep the villain distracted while Kamui Woods sneaks in and uses his branches to pull the hostage out of the villain's body. Other heroes can provide backup and help evacuate and protect bystanders. Once the hostage is free, they can focus their attention on detaining the villain until more pros show up. Midoriya waited for the pro heroes to make any move but grew exceedingly frustrated by the second. Backdraft was too focused on putting out fires in empty buildings while the other heroes were simply standing by. "Come on. Why are you just standing around? There's enough of you here to formulate a plan of attack." Midoriya grew frustrated. Death Arms. With keen hearing, Midoriya heard one of the heroes shout amidst the explosions and sirens, "I think the boy is getting weaker, what should we do? None of us have the quirk to stop this guy. I hate it, but we're just gonna have to wait a little longer till more pros show." Death Arms yelled, sounding frustrated. Midoriya clenched his fists to the point his knuckles turned white and fingers popped. What? He inwardly yelled, his body visibly beginning to tremble in anger. So what if your quirk isn't perfectly suited? You're supposed to be pro-heroes, for crying out loud. Work together. Are you too afraid to put your lives on the line? Is that it? Midoriya's blood boiled at these heroes' actions, or lack thereof. He could feel the urge to rush in himself but stopped, remembering what he was told about quirk regulation laws. Japan's quirk laws were some of the strictest in the world and forbade citizens from using quirks on others unless it could be proven to be in self-defense or you were authorized by the government. He wasn't authorized, so he'd be breaking the law if he rushed in. The hostage may not last much longer. They can't afford to wait. Midoriya mentally shouted. I'm a disgrace. Yagi insulted himself. Someone has to take action. Midoriya thought anxiously. A real hero has to come. I'm not a real hero. Yagi clutched his side even harder, pain and shame overwhelming him. Someone, anyone. Midoriya was internally holding out hope one of the pro-heroes would take action, but they didn't. They were merely helpless bystanders. Looking past the heroes, Midoriya saw the face of the person being held hostage by the sludge villain. His eyes widened in shock. He recognized the spiky ash-blonde hair and red eyes. It was the same guy from the high school gate earlier. The teen was struggling hard and trying desperately to open his mouth to no avail. Then, Midoriya saw the look of absolute desperation in his eyes, pleading for someone to help. Midoriya Izuku's body moved on its own. He couldn't stand by any longer. With a fierce look of determination, Midoriya sprinted out of the crowd and toward the sludge villain. Music. Boku no Hero Academia Ousei Run. Start 022 timestamp. All Might and the other pro-heroes gasped as they witnessed Midoriya Izuku rush straight ahead. No, you idiot. Stop. You're going to get yourself killed. Death Arms panicked. He ignored the protests and continued running down the fire-filled street. In a swift motion, Midoriya pulled the case off his bag, unzipped it, and pulled out the American-themed disc while tossing the case off to the side. The crowd looked on in shocked bewilderment. Not this brat again, the sludge villain remarked, looking towards Midoriya. Green hair? Bakugo thought, confused. What was that stealth gaijin doing? Why was he rushing in to save him? Did he have a death wish? Gotta distract this monster long enough to pull that guy out. Midoriya swiftly analyzed his surroundings for anything that could help and immediately spotted something several meters behind the villain. A water hydrant. Perfect, but he'd need a distraction first. You're toast, kid, the sludge man yelled, stretching out a slimy fist toward Midoriya. Midoriya dodged to the side at the last moment and jumped onto a wall, using it as a springboard to launch himself back forward, leaving a small indention where his feet pushed off. Yagi saw this and was taken aback. Chow? That shouldn't be possible. Returning to the ground, Midoriya, with one hand, slid off his yellow satchel and tossed it at the villain's face. Several items went flying out and struck the monster's eyes, momentarily stunning him. His grasp on Bakugo loosened enough to give the blonde teen the opportunity to finally breathe. With the villain distracted, Midoriya readied his left arm. Gotta throw it precisely. His eyes narrowed while expertly gauging the trajectory and then flung the shield from his hand like a frisbee. The unique bell-like sound of the disc's metal sung through the air. It rebounded off a nearby street pole perfectly, heading toward its target. The shield struck the hydrant at the right angle to spout a torrent of water directly towards the sludge villain. The hell? The mudman shouted as water was doused over him, putting out several fires nearby in the process. The disc bounced off the hydrant and towards Midoriya's location, who reached out to snatch it in midair. All of this happened in one fluid motion. The pro-heroes and bystanders watched the scene in shocked awe. How did that happen? How could that frisbee have broken the hydrant? And he caught it so easily? Was it part of his quirk? Yagi's eyes widened in shocked disbelief. He knew of only one object from history that could do what that disc just did. But it couldn't possibly be his shield. It disappeared along with him over 150 years ago. Damn it. The monster cursed as his parts of his goopy body started falling to the ground. My own fluids are being watered down. Midoriya rushed in to grab a hold of Bakugo and pull him out of the sludge monster. He then pulled him several meters away where he could kneel and catch his breath. Bakugo coughed a bit, and then looked up at Midoriya dumbfounded. What the hell? What are you doing here? Midoriya stood back up, slid his left forearm through 2 brown leather straps behind the disc, and held it up like it were a shield. He looked back at Bakugo with a confident, reassuring smile. To save you. Could not watch you die. Yagi Toshinori gasped in utter shock. Here was this young man, who claimed to be quirkless, risking his life and doing everything in his power to save someone from a much stronger foe. Meanwhile, he, the so-called symbol of peace, was just standing back doing nothing. World believes only power important. But I think heart matters most. Midoriya's words from earlier came to the forefront of his mind. All Might, who before had felt himself anchored down and powerless, felt a surge of emotions rip through him. After everything I told that young man, he's the one doing everything he can to save that boy. Not the other heroes. Not me. An ideal Yagi had cherished since his youth yet had been watered down in the last few years, was suddenly reignited with a new intensity. His grip on the light pole he had been leaning against tightened. The metal creaked under his fingers as steam began to rise from his body. All Might's teeth grit together as he dug deep into himself to find his power. As the steam increased, his body began to grow. Yagi Toshinori fully resolved himself. I have to do something. No matter the cost. Demon brat. I'm done playing with you. The sludge villain managed to move away from the water torrent, gaining enough control of his goopy body, and moved to attack Midoriya. Save the boy. This thing will kill him. Death Arms yelled as the pro-heroes advanced to rescue Midoriya from the Mudman's attack. Midoriya did not express fear and stood firm in front of Bakugo, holding his shield out to protect the ash blonde and himself. A small explosion went off in front of him, forcing him to shift his shield to cover his face. I really am pathetic. Midoriya lowered the shield to see All Might blocking the Sludgeman's attack. All Might? But I told you that power is crucial to being a hero, but I remember now that power alone is worthless without the heart to use it. All Might lifted the slime tentacle upward and clenched his fist tightly while Midoriya and Bakugo looked on in amazement. Pros are always risking their lives. That's the true test of a hero. All Might yelled with blood leaking from his mouth, illustrating the pain that he was suffering from due to pushing himself beyond his buff form's time limit. Damn you, All Might. The sludge villain stretched out numerous sludge tentacles to strike the number 1 pro. Detroit Smash. All Might punched the villain square in the face, and the force behind the punch scattered the villain and easily put out the fires around the street. The heroes were able to protect the onlookers from the shockwave and the rest of the wind. Music end. All Might was on a knee, panting hard. Everyone, bystanders and pro-heroes alike, looked on in awed silence at the display of his raw power. Then raindrops fell. The light outside also grew dimmer. It's raining? A civilian questioned. Look at the clouds, another bystander noted. They're moving. Storm clouds swirled high in the atmosphere above the exact spot where All Might threw his mighty punch. Holy crap! Death Arms gasped. He changed the weather. All Might stumbled for a moment before correcting himself. Bearing through the intense pain, he maintained his bright smile and held up his right arm in victory. As a result, the crowd burst into cheering for their number 1 hero's victory. All Might glanced over at Midoriya tending to Bakugo, who seemed to have passed out from a combination of exhaustion and the backlash from his Detroit Smash. This young man is something else. Later, the pro-heroes collected all the scattered mounds of sludge, and the villain went into police custody where he belonged. A crowd of reporters and cameras gathered to get an opportunity to speak to All Might. Meanwhile, Midoriya sat on the sidewalk while being chewed out by Death Arms and Kamui Woods. They were less than pleased, but Midoriya didn't seem to care. Moron, do you have a death wish? Death Arms exclaimed. There was no reason to put yourself in danger like that. Kamui added, equally irritated. Midoriya scowled at the pro-heroes. Someone had to. What's that supposed to mean? Death Arms demanded angrily. Hostage was suffocating, you did nothing. Chose to stand around and wait. Midoriya snapped. Should be ashamed of yourself. Now, listen you dash. Death Arms was stopped when Kamui Woods put a hand on his shoulder. You can give your statement to the police, Death Arms. I'll handle this. Kamui said, leaving no room for argument. Death Arms shot once last glare to Midoriya and then walked off with a huff. Kamui directed a stern gaze at Midoriya. Tell me, kid, were you using your quirk in that fight? Midoriya shook his head. No. Kamui didn't see any sign of deceit on the young man's face, but some people were good at lying. There was no obvious sign of illegal quirk usage, even while accounting that amazing feat with the shield, so they couldn't bust him for that. However, that didn't mean he didn't break the law. He was curious about something else though. That shield, where'd you get it? Kamui Woods questioned, curious to know if it could be classified as a weapon. Just a replica. Custom order. Midoriya responded, keeping a straight face. Decoration for room. You're telling me you used a wall hanger to bust a water hydrant? Kamui was skeptical. Midoriya shrugged with a nervous smile. Good replica, I guess. You a foreigner, kid? He asked, noting his shaky Japanese and Western accent. Midoriya nodded. Yes. You should know that it's illegal for citizens, foreign or not, to interfere with pro-hero business, even if they have good intentions. Kamui pensively stated. Even if you didn't use your quirk, we technically can still have you arrested on account for hero interference and destruction to city property with the hydrant. Midoriya did not flinch at the threat of detainment. I know. Not sorry. He firmly responded. Kamui Woods and Midoriya's gazes were deadlocked one another, neither willing to back down. After a moment, Kamui finally closed his eyes and deeply exhaled, reaching into his pouch on his wooden belt. Suspecting the pro-hero was reaching for a set of HNDCFFS, Midoriya held out both arms in compliance. Even though he didn't agree with it, he wasn't going to resist arrest. However, Kamui surprised him by handing him a slip of yellow parchment instead. Midoriya took the paper and briefly looked over the bold kanji on the paper. The fine? This is a fine for damaging the water hydrant. That was sound thinking on your part to use water to prevent the villain from creating more explosions and simultaneously weakening him in the process. Wish we had thought of that. Nonetheless, it is still destruction to public property, and we can't ignore it. We're also letting you slide for interfering with pro-hero business this time and this time only. Kamui firmly asserted. You can pay your fine at City Hall or the city's website. If you pay it on time, this whole incident can be kept off your record. Deal? Midoriya nodded in understanding and placed the fine in his satchel. Fair. He sighed, politely bowing his head. Thank you. Kamui nodded and proceeded to walk away. Try to stay out of trouble, kid. Hate to see you get arrested. He stopped to give him a glance over the shoulder. With your attitude and drive, you'd make a great pro-hero one day. With that, Kamui left to join the other pro-heroes by the police and crowd of reporters. Midoriya gathered his things and proceeded to walk away with mixed feelings. Bakugo, meanwhile, was being praised for his bravery by some of the other pro-heroes. One hero even offered him a sidekick position if he decided to go pro. Bakugo, however, wasn't listening as he stared at the ground in deep contemplation. Out of the corner of his eye, he watched the verdette amble away. With a conflicted expression. Later that day, the sun was descending over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city. Midoriya Izuku was walking down a relatively secluded path, opting to take a different path to his apartment. All the while, he had his smartphone up to his ear in a conversation with a certain someone. Look, Agent Coulson, I know you're not happy but dash. That's an understatement, Cap. You could have nearly blown your cover. You're lucky the Japanese media is giving all the credit to All Might and not focusing on you at all. Agent Coulson exclaimed over the phone, sounding quite irritated. Special Agent Phil Coulson was his own personal liaison to SHIELD, an American extragovernmental counterterrorism and intelligence agency tasked with maintaining both national and global security. Basically, if Midoriya needed to contact S.H.I.E.L.D. or vice versa, Phil Coulson was the man to go to. Unbeknownst to Midoriya, Coulson had volunteered for the position and seemed very adamant in doing it. What were you even doing in that part of Mizudafu anyway? Agent Coulson continued. That's way off the normal route from the community college to your apartment. Well, after finishing my classes, I heard there was a villain attack near Tatooine Station, so I went to check it out. Took some notes on the pro-heroes there. Midoriya calmly explained. I decided to just walk back, get some fresh air. And you just happened to stumble across the scene with the sludge guy? That sounds way too coincidental for my tastes. Agent Coulson was rightfully skeptical. Are you sure there isn't anything else I need to know? Midoriya wondered if he should mention his initial encounter with the sludge villain which led to meeting All Might and discovering his secret. But he made a promise to All Might, and he was a man of his word. No, nothing that's relevant. Was just a coincidence, I guess. Right? And you couldn't turn the other way and let the heroes there do their jobs. Agent Coulson questioned. You weren't there, Agent Coulson? Midoriya yelled, aggravated. There were more than enough heroes there to formulate a plan, but they were completely okay with just standing around, waiting for someone else to do their DMN jobs. The hostage, he would have died if someone didn't act. I get that, Cap. But Japan's quirk regulation laws are very strict. This isn't the 2000s Wild West anymore. You have to be mindful about this stuff now. He lectured. Midoriya paused to sigh, momentarily collecting his thoughts. I know, and I am trying to follow the rules, but if I see someone in trouble I can't turn the other way, whether I break the law or not. Coulson was silent for a moment before exhaling deeply. You don't make things easy, Cap Hat. He chuckled ruefully. Happy to know you're the real deal like the legends say. Don't worry about your fine, by the way. S.H.I.E.L.D. will cover it and I'm not taking no for an answer. You have more important things to focus on than trying to pay a city fine. Midoriya smiled lightly. Thanks, Agent Coulson. That does take a load off my mind. He received a fixed pension from the agency that covered living expenses and a good allocation for leisurely things. Not having to wonder about how to pay back a 150,000 yen fine was a relief. Wouldn't be the first time S.H.I.E.L.D. has had to clean up messes, certainly won't be the last. Just try to be more careful going forward. If the world found out that dash. Yeah, I know. Midoriya rolled his eyes. If the world found out their fabled first hero was still alive and wasn't a natural-born one, Pandora's box would be opened. I get it. I don't agree with it either. But we can't afford to take this lightly. Coulson expressed sternly. There are many resourceful villains out there that would drool over the fact that artificial superpowers are possible. It's already been over 150 years. If they haven't figured out her serum's formula yet, I doubt they ever will. Least she can rest easy. Midoriya solemnly thought. S.H.I.E.L.D. and I'll be here if you need us, Cap. Coulson continued. Just keep studying hard and training your body back into fighting shape. UA University's entrance exam is no joke. Only 1 out of 300 applicants are accepted. I know, Agent Coulson. I'm studying hard to get caught up on everything. Midoriya stated. You can just call me Coulson, Cap. Or Phil. Whatever's comfortable with you. Oh. Midoriya heard Coulson's tone shift to excitement. You should take the time to also catch up on some of the latest pop culture trends in your free time. That way when you get into UA you know the lingo of your peers. If I get into UA, Midoriya corrected. When? Coulson retorted strongly. Also, unrelated, there's a new movie from Disney coming out about you in July. A new trailer just released today. You think you can check it out and tell me your thoughts? Midoriya sweat dropped with a sheepish smile. Coulson sure is a fanboy. Sure. I'll add it to the list, he replied. Good. Also, thanks again for signing my replica shield. And no problem. Midoriya lightly stuttered, feeling bashful. Spend your time wisely, Cap. Don't be afraid to make some friends while you're there. Coulson out. With that, the call ended. He placed the phone back in his pocket and sighed deeply. He reached into his satchel to pull out a notepad titled Things to Catch Up On. Flipping over several pages of various list items that included movies, books, and music from the last 150 years. At the end, he added, Disney movie trailer about me. He sighed heavily, placing the notepad back in his bag. I have my work cut out for me. He murmured in English. Green hair. Midoriya stopped and turned, surprised to see it was the ash blonde running toward him. Hi, it's you. Didn't get your name. He awkwardly said. Bakugo stopped a few meters away from Midoriya and took a short moment to catch his breath. Did he run the whole way here? Bakugo. Yukai-jin, what's your deal? Huh. Midoriya tilted his head in confusion. Why'd you rush in like that? Bakugo clarified. You don't know me. So why? Oh, looked like you need help. Body moved on own. Midoriya shakily replied. Bakugo's gaze narrowed as if he were scrutinizing Midoriya's reply. His body moved on its own, huh? He shot Midoriya with an expression mixed with indignation and confusion. Yeah, well, it was All Might who saved me at the end of the day, so don't think I owe you or anything, got it? Bakugo yelled angrily. And don't you dare think you can. Look down on me for this, green hair. I will be Japan's #1 hero. And this'll only make me stronger. Not you or anyone else will have to ever save me. Got it? Midoriya simply nodded. Why? Understand? Also, work on your DMN Japanese. It's freaking annoying to listen to. With that, Bakugo stuffed his hands in his pants pockets and stomped away. After Bakugo turned a corner, Midoriya shook his head and chuckled lightly. That guy definitely has a lot of pride. Bakugo. A thought then occurred to him. He said he wants to be the #1 hero. I wonder if he's trying out for the UA entrance exam too? Should ask him if I see him again. I am here. All Might announced, popping up from around a corner. Midoriya yelped at All Might's sudden entrance. All Might? Why you here? The reporters. Haha. All Might laughed boisterously while flexing his impressive biceps. I stand for justice, not sound bites. Because I am All Mig Dash. In the middle of his monologue, All Might's form suddenly reverted to its shriveled state in a puff of steam. He was also spitting out blood for good measure too. Hey, you okay? Midoriya screamed in concerned shock. Why? Yagi Tashinori wiped the blood off his mouth. Clearing his throat, he spoke in English. Young man, I came to thank you and revise what I told you earlier. I also have a couple questions. What do you mean? Midoriya asked, curious. If it hadn't been for you, I would have just been a worthless bystander in the crowd. Thank you. You shouldn't thank me. Midoriya shook his head. It was partially my fault that the villain was there to begin with. I got in the way of your work, unintentional or not. I wasted your energy and not to mention your time. I'm not done. Of all the people there, it was only you who acted, despite being quirkless. Seeing you try to save a life spurred me to action. Yagi confessed. You reminded me that true heroism isn't about power, but the heart. And you showed that more than anyone today. Midoriya lightly gasped and looked at the emaciated man in surprise. There are stories about every top hero, all the way back to the first hero, and how they became great. Most have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. A small smile began to take shape on Midoriya's face as he understood where All Might was going with his speech. And that happened to you today. Several key memories from Midoriya's past surfaced, ranging from various people telling him that he'd never amount to anything to loved ones gently telling him it'd be impossible to achieve his dreams. Midoriya? No way. He's an idiot if he thinks the military would want anything to do with him. You're just a scrawny, little weakling who'll be lucky to live past 30. Sweetie, I'll always love and support you, but please don't put all your eggs in that basket. I'm sorry, Izuku-kun. I'm your friend, so I won't lie, you really should reevaluate your options. There had only been one person who had believed in him, and her memory was causing his heart to clench. Heroes, soldiers or not, are measured by their heart, not their strength. And you got lots of heart. Her cheerful yet wise voice echoed in his head. The wind started blowing as cherry blossoms flew. Those who inspire others to do good, quirkless or not, are heroes. Yagi declared. Midoriya lowered his head, unable to suppress a proud smile, and felt his eyes get a tad misty. Hearing the symbol of peace confirm his ideals was reassuring. Maybe he could find a place in this crazy comic book-esque world. Thank you, All Might, he replied. Yagi Tashinori smiled at the verdette. There's something I need to know about you, though. His expression became serious. Earlier, you ran past me on the sidewalk at a speed too fast for any normal person. And in the fight, you left a small indentation in the wall when you pushed off. Those both are superhuman feats. How is that possible if you're quirkless? You didn't lie to me, did you? Midoriya internally flinched. He really does need to be mindful of his actions. Well, no sense in trying to cover it up. No, I didn't lie. I really am quirkless, but I didn't say I was powerless. Midoriya replied. Yagi pet a brow ridge, bewildered. What does he mean by that? Not sure I understand what you're saying. What about that shield then? Yagi directed his gaze to the circular case on Midoriya's back. With how that thing bounced off objects and broke the fire hydrant, no way that thing is a prop. Well, you see. Midoriya stopped, unsure of how to explain. And you used it quite well. Color me impressed. With the way you swung that thing around, I would have thought you were Captain America or something, Yagi joked, trying to lighten the air. I'm just curious to know your story, ya know? Midoriya looked away with a nervous expression while sheepishly rubbing the back of his neck. All Might noticed the change and was confused. What? Did I say something wrong? Well. Midoriya's eyes were directed to the ground, squirming under Yagi's gaze. You think you could keep a secret from me, All Might? Of course. Yagi replied truthfully. You're keeping my secret, after all. Least I can do is keep one of yours. You swear to keep this between us? Midoriya lifted his head to look him straight in the eyes. He was completely serious. Yagi was confused. He wondered what could be so important that the verdette would swear him to secrecy. I will. Yagi nodded. You have my word. Midoriya's shoulders relaxed slightly. Letting the straps fall off his shoulders, he pulled off the case and unzipped it, pulling out the replica of the first hero's support item. This shield isn't a replica, he confessed. Yagi blinked twice. It wasn't? He stared intently at the item. The memory of Midoriya's shield was engraved in Yagi's mind. He had seen that object throughout his youth being wielded by the captain in old footage, movies, and posters. Yagi then paused to look at Midoriya more closely. Something did seem familiar about him. That wasn't possible. Just a genetic coincidence. Also, it had been over 150 years since the captain's time. Then again, he was very old as well. What do you mean, young man? Yagi inclined. Midoriya sighed heavily, sliding his left arm through the shield straps. Honestly, I'm not sure how to put this lightly. I'm still new to this era and all, trying to catch up on everything I've missed. But I thought it wouldn't be a big deal carrying this thing around with me. Gives me comfort, I suppose. If anyone asked, I'd say it was a replica and they'd leave it at that. He stopped to nervously strum his fingers against the shield's cool, smooth surface. But today, I had to use it, and it nearly gave me away to everyone at the scene. Yagi's eyes widened at the shocking possibility based on Midoriya's reply. The truth was bubbling just beneath the surface of their conversation. It couldn't be. He had to know, he needed to ask even if it sounded crazy. Are you? Yagi hesitated, not believing the words about to come out of his mouth. You're Captain America? Yagi Tashinori, All Might, had seen many things in his years as a pro-hero. Petty theft, gangs, murderers, kidnapping, natural disasters, trigger busts, and crazed supervillains, the works. This, however, did not fall under any of the above. Midoriya's eyes were closed for a moment as if he were processing All Might's question and whether to respond. Finally, he opened his emerald eyes, revealing the seriousness behind them. Yes. Just like that, Yagi's world was flipped upside down. He leaned his hand against a nearby wall. All the remaining strength in his weakened body was fading away at the dawning realization. I need to sit down, All Might said faintly. He then felt himself collapse face-first to the sidewalk, his vision getting blurry. All might was the last thing he heard before consciousness left him. Teachers open the doors, but you must enter by yourself. Chinese proverb. San Francisco, California, April 2042. Peggy cut off her motorcycle's engine and pushed out the kickstand. Pulling off her black helmet, her glossy black hair fell down to her shoulder blades. She wore a black zipped biker jacket, tight blue jeans, and black boots. All right, finally here. Peggy dismounted the bike, relieved to finally stand after a 4-hour road trip. Traffic to San Fran was a pain. Izuku dismounted the bike and took off his white helmet. He wore a dark emerald jacket with black trim over a red t-shirt, dark gray pants, and his red high tops. Strapped to his back was a yellow knapsack. Oh wow, we're actually here. His eyes sparkled with excitement at the massive convention center across the large parking lot. We're not even in the building yet and you're already this excited? Peggy couldn't help but laugh, ruffling Izuku's messy hair. I can't help it. Izuku pulled away. The Innovation Expo is the biggest STEM event of the year. The world's best and newest inventions and scientific theories are showcased here. STEM? Peggy pet a brow in bewilderment as she put their helmets away in the bike's saddle boxes. Like on a plant? Oh, it's an acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. Izuku clarified. I knew that. Just testing you. Peggy sheepishly chuckled, quickly grabbing Izuku's left wrist before she started pulling him forward. Now come on. Let's go see if they have any giant robots or mecha suits. That would be cool. But Peggin, can you loosen your grip? Izuku asked. It's pretty strong. Oh, sorry about that, Izuku-an. Peggy immediately loosened her hold, a tinge of pink on her face. Got a little too excited. No sweat. Let's go see the expo already, Izuku said excitedly. After 10 minutes of walking, the duo finally made it to one of the convention center's main gates. The name of the multi-storied building was the Andoria Convention Center, according to the various signs they passed. Lines of people were lined up by the entrance with security personnel checking people for passes and for any potential weapons via a metal detector. As they approached closer to the gate, Peggy reached into her jacket pocket and handed Izuku a paper slip. Here's your pass, Izuku-an. Oh thanks. Where'd you get these passes anyway, Peg-chan? Izuku inquired. I figured they would have been sold out on such short notice. Just a friend from work. Peggy shrugged nonchalantly. Are they in the Marines too? Nah, but she does work for the military. Nice, but kind of eccentric. Still, that was nice of her. Yeah, I guess so. Peggy turned forward with a thoughtful look. Definitely has ulterior motives though. After scanning their passes and being checked over, Peggy and Izuku were finally allowed to enter the convention center. Izuku looked around with a wide smile, barely able to contain his glee from the exhibits he could see on the first floor. The Innovation Expo featured showcases from major companies across the world. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Toyota, Honda, SpaceX, Google, and Apple were only a few of those being featured. There were also many other smaller startups eager to showcase their products in hopes of gaining investors. It truly was an amalgamation of different people showcasing their inventions, products, and theories to improve lifestyle, enhance human knowledge, and better humanity as a whole, and make profit, of course. The last one was certainly the big driving factor for many. This is really amazing, Izuku exclaimed. Oh, I better record all this. He took off his knapsack to quickly pull out a new notebook and pencil, titling it 2042 Innovation Expo Analysis. Still an avid note-taker, huh? Peggy smiled. No wonder you get straight A's. Well, it's fun, especially when it revolves around topics that pique my interest. Izuku commented. Also, never know when they may come in handy. The duo found a sign detailing the building's layout. The bigger exhibits for larger, mechanical-based products, such as cars and robotics, would be reserved for the first floor while the rest were set up on the second, third, and fourth floors. The second floor displayed the latest cutting-edge computer technology while the third floor featured anything space, physics, agriculture, environmental, and energy related. The fourth floor, which Izuku was really excited to see, was fully dedicated to meta abilities. Wow! Peggy whistled, impressed by the expo's massive scale. This is way bigger than I thought. Where do you think we should start, Izuku-an? So many exhibits to choose. Although I am excited to see the advancements made in robotic technology and the newest discoveries in meta-ability research, it'd probably be best to reserve those for the end. He muttered to himself. So, with that being said, we should check out the second and third floors first. However, Peg-chan is mostly interested in robotics, so I have to take her wants into consideration too. Perhaps if we split the middle and dash. Peg-chan groaned in exasperation as Izuku continued to mumble, making several people passing by uncomfortable. There he goes again. Hey, Izuku-an. The marine woman snapped her fingers in front of Izuku's face, snapping the teen out of his mumbling trance. What? Izuku blinked. Were you saying something, Peg-chan? Let's check out the second and third floors first. We can save the more exciting stuff for later, deal? She offered with a small smile. Izuku returned the smile and nodded. Sounds good. The pair found a set of escalators that took them up to the second floor, which was packed with people. Most of the exhibits featured future models for desktops, laptops, smartphones, and various devices. The most popular booth was showcasing prototype hologram technology, much to the pair's amazement. Though the hologram itself was transparent and not well detailed, it was still cool nonetheless. Izuku took many notes and sketches detailing the prototype hologram projector. Satisfied they had seen enough of the computer floor, Peggy and Izuku went to the third floor. Much to their surprise, there were not many people present on the floor in spite of the major exhibits. NASA and SpaceX had exhibits to showcase the latest development in nuclear-powered thrusters that could, in theory, get humans to Mars and the outer solar system in relatively quick time. Oil gas companies like ExxonMobil and BP were demonstrating new efficient methods for creating biofuels. Energy companies proudly featured cutting-edge technology for nuclear, windmill, and solar panel efficiency. One exhibit was a mechanical engineer displaying his idea for a floating, artificial city that included an elaborate scaled model. In theory, according to him, these city islands would be self-sustaining communities on the oceans, each capable of moving to avoid devastating storms and remain in temperate weather for most of the year. Izuku found the concept interesting, believing it could be a solution to overpopulation in some countries. However, it was doubtful that anyone would ever invest in such an expensive idea. Izuku did dedicate a page in his notebook for the artificial island concept though. The most interesting exhibit, however, came from a new energy startup company named Howard Shield Inc. On display was a tractor tire-sized circular tube surrounded with wires and complex devices placed haphazardly around the perimeter, making a low humming noise. What really garnered attention was the brilliant blue energy sparkling inside the tube. What you see here is the future of energy, people. Please, gather around. A well-groomed, flamboyant man exclaimed. The prototype reactor I've designed, dubbed the arc reactor, has the capability of producing all the clean, free energy the world needs. Introducing just a few joules kickstarts a chain reaction that, in theory, produces gigajoules of energy. Whoa! Izuku was impressed as he swiftly sketched out the device and jotted down notes. Is that a lot? Peggy whispered to Izuku. A ton. The biggest power plants in the world can only produce a fraction of that kind of power. Izuku replied hastily. Seems a little too far-fetched if you ask me. One viewer commented. How is that even possible? Another questioned. Oh, doubters? Don't believe me? The man smirked. Well, kind sirs, direct your attention to the electrical meter to the side. The crowd turned to a LED screen displaying the reactor's energy output in bold, green numbers. The reactor is hooked up straight to this meter. As you can see, this prototype is producing a noteworthy 500 joules already. Impressive, right? A bigger one would be able to produce so much more with minimal upkeep. You said this device could produce gigajoules of power, in theory, correct? Another spectator, a businesswoman, questioned with a non-nonsense manner. What are you basing this claim on? My math, sweetie. The man grinned roguishly. And my math is never wrong. Without warning, the circular reactor started sparking and a gray haze wafted off the device. The humming noise stopped as the blue light disappeared. As a result, the electrical output meter promptly dropped to 0. The woman furrowed her brows, unimpressed. Several people, including Peggy, couldn't suppress their laughter at the blunder. I did say it was a prototype. The man chuckled, sweating in embarrassment. He then quickly resumed his confident aura. So, who would like to invest in the energy of the future? The crowd was now unenthused and started walking away. That's a shame. If the guy was a bit more professional, he could attract more investors. He could really have something with this. Izuku thought while finishing his notes on the arc reactor. Upon viewing all the third floor's exhibits, the pair proceeded toward the escalators. That was some pretty interesting stuff, minus the blunder from the last guy. Wonder why there aren't many people up here. Peggy wondered. Unfortunately, with the rise of human superpowers, the public's interest in things like space exploration and global energy production is waning. Izuku frowned, finishing his notes on the third-level exhibits. Meaning most funding, public or private, is being directed into meta-ability research instead. Peggy nodded in understanding. Makes sense, I suppose. Shame though. I was hoping we'd reach Mars in my lifetime. Izuku shrugged. Don't know if that's gonna happen now. Yeah, with everything that's happening in the world, and everything that could happen, people could care less about going to space or clean energy. Peggy mentally lamented. Peggy and Izuku rode the escalator to the 4th floor and were shocked by the huge crowd. There had to have been at least 3 times as many people present here than the lower 3 floors combined. Meta abilities were certainly the rage these days. Peggy could have sworn Izuku was about to burst from excitement. He's really into this stuff, huh? From there, the pair viewed every exhibit they could despite the growing crowd. Most booths were research teams showcasing their findings on the nuisances on the mechanics of meta abilities. It was fascinating stuff for Izuku, who was scribbling down notes so fast Peggy was worried that his notebook might burst into flames, while Peggy herself was only half listening. Her mind seemed to be somewhere else. Something that garnered both their interests was an exhibit featuring a prototype for meta ability suppression cuffs. To demonstrate, the speaker introduced his colleague, who had the ability to produce an icy mist-off. The display freaked out some people in the crowd, but the speaker was quick to assure them that she was harmless. He placed the bulky cuffs on her and the icy mist promptly disappeared. She tried to activate her meta ability but admitted she was unable to do so. The crowd was very impressed as multiple cameras went off. Izuku spotted groups of people in expensive suits approaching the Metacuff team, speculating that they were potential investors. That could definitely be useful for law enforcement. Peggy noted. They need to be developing more stuff like this. Right. Izuku sketched the cuffs and wrote lines of notes. This could make containment for crazed meta users much more doable for authorities rather than just tranquilizing them, or worse. Peggy felt her thigh vibrate and pulled out her phone. Sorry for being late. Traffic was hectic? On the 1st floor. You hear? Peggy signed and replied. Yeah. On top floor with friend. We'll be down soon. Great. Standing by East Gate. Putting her phone away, the onyx-haired young woman turned her attention back to her friend. Hey, Izuku-san. Why don't we head down to the 1st floor? We can come back up when there's less people. Yeah, it is getting pretty crowded. Izuku commented, realizing how little space they had to move. Peggy and Izuku carefully maneuvered their way out of the crowd and back to the escalators. Moments later, the pair finally made it back to the 1st floor, which was thankfully more spaced out. I'm gonna head to the restroom, Izuku-san. You go on ahead. I'll catch up. Peggy said. All right. Izuku nodded. I'll be by the mechs. Peggy nodded and the duo walked away. The Marine went past the restrooms and around the facility until arriving at the building's east side entrance. She looked around the crowd of people and spotted her target standing close by the entrance. Approaching her target, who was looking away and unaware of her presence, she spoke up. Doctor. Whoa! He jumped and turned to face Peggy, startled. You don't sneak up on people like that. The doctor was a young woman standing at 5'5", 167 centimeters, had smooth pale skin, and was of Asian descent judging by her facial structure. She had ruby red hair tied into a ponytail by a black hair tie hanging off her left shoulder. A pair of thin glasses rested on her face, and if one looked closely, they would notice 3 light yellow rings around her pupils contained within her emerald irises. She wore a light purple shirt under a long white lab coat, black pants, and black slip-on shoes. Dangling from her neck was a red lanyard with her ID card attached. A gray satchel loosely hung from her right shoulder. Overall, despite some wrinkles around her eyes presumably from overwork, she was fairly attractive and had a bubbly aura around her. Voice actress, Laura Bailey. Peggy remained stoic as she waited for the shorter woman to calm down. Well, anyways, the doctor sighed, I'm glad you could meet me here, Yamamoto-san, or should I say Corporal Yamamoto? She smirked. Corporal is fine, doctor. Peggy replied plainly. So serious. In any case, have you been enjoying the expo so far, Corporal? Would have been here to meet you sooner, but traffic is pretty crazy in this town, ya know. Peggy nodded, keeping a straight face. Thank you for the passes. My friend is basically in heaven right now. He can't get enough of this stuff. The doctor pet an eyebrow, a teasing grin formed on her face. Could it be that the Iron Woman has a secret boyfriend? It's not like that. Peggy quickly denied, trying to hide a light blush. She straightened herself and resumed her professional attitude. Can we just get to the point of this discussion? Straight to business, huh? Okay. She motioned to the doors. Follow me outside. We can talk somewhere a little more private. Peggy nodded and followed the redhead out of the building. Meanwhile, Izuku was in awe of the robotics exhibit. He could feel his hand hurting from how fast he was jotting down notes and sketching things out, but he pushed on anyway. There were full-body mech suits that pilots could operate for moving much heavier objects weighing up to several tons. There were even exhibits showcasing the latest developments on robotic prosthetics for amputees. One amputee, a retired veteran who had lost his left leg in battle, had a prototype hooked up to demonstrate. The veteran and everyone else were impressed by how responsive the prosthetics seemed to be. It was almost as if it were the real appendage. So fascinating. Izuku mumbled while writing. So many applications for those mech suits. They could be used in warehouses, construction sites, and even in the military. The prosthetics are also a major leap forward in medical technology. Izuku mindlessly walked to the side to get out of other people's way while continuing to fill his notebook. He stopped by the glass panels lining the wall. Satisfied with the notes he had taken, the dark-haired teen closed the book and placed it back in his knapsack for now. Looking around, he just realized Peggy had not returned yet. He took out his phone and didn't see any texts from her. It's been over 10 minutes. Izuku was mildly surprised by how much time had passed since they separated. Maybe I should go look dash. He stopped when he spotted something out of his peripheral vision through the glass panels. Across the street, he saw American flag banners hanging around a building. Looking closely, he realized it was a military recruitment office and, judging by the signs, it was for the U.S. Army. The lights were still on, so maybe the office was still open? Izuku's expression hardened, deciding on what he needed to do. Meanwhile, Peggy and the doctor were sitting on opposite sides at a park bench in the convention center's gardening square. They were in a relatively secluded spot with tall green hedges around them and, more importantly, no people within earshot. It was late evening as an orange glow was cast over the city as the sun began its descent in the west. So, have you considered the offer I made? The doctor inquired in a serious tone. Peggy did not respond immediately. A short moment passed as she lowered her head, exhaling deeply. I have. And? The doctor pressed. I'm honored that out of all the candidates, you chose me. She shut her eyes and shook her head. But I have to respectfully decline, Doctor. And may I ask why, Corporal? She sounded surprised. Clearly this wasn't the answer she was expecting. I dunno. Maybe because I don't want to be mutated into a monster, or something along those lines. Peggy dryly responded. See, Corporal? The redhead stammered. I can assure you that That what? I won't be mutated? I won't die. Peggy challenged. You said it yourself, Doctor. The project in itself is risky and practically untested. I'd essentially be your guinea pig. Corporal, I wouldn't ask for human test subjects unless I was 95% sure it'd be successful. The doctor asserted. Such a statistic did not alleviate Peggy's concerns one bit as she turned to the doctor incredulously. Only 95%, huh? And the other 5%? Well, the doctor tapped her index fingers together timidly, that is reserved for the unexpected circumstances that even I can't account for. DNA is crazy complex, ya know. She shook her head and adopted a determined look. But it will be successful. I've perfected the formula this time, I'm sure. Maybe you have, but honestly the whole idea behind the AMP is dangerous and too risky for my tastes. Peggy responded. I'm sorry, Dr. Hatsum, but my decision is final. You'll have to find someone else to test your formula on. Dr. Hatsum frowned, disappointed. I understand. Thank you for your time, Corporal. Again, thank you for the passes. Peggy nodded and stood up to leave. Good luck to you, Doctor. Yeah, same to you. Dr. Hatsum replied, disheartened. As the Marine walked away, Dr. Hatsum slumped her shoulders and practically deflated. Shoot! She exclaimed to herself. I was positive she'd accept, and Corporal Yamamoto was the perfect candidate too. Darn it! She collapsed back on the bench and groaned in frustration. At this rate, I'll have to choose one of those stuck-up JARCs the Colonel keeps recommending. She internally lamented. Idiot doesn't even understand how the formula works. Give it to those muscleheads and you'll practically be creating supervillains. The red-haired doctor stood up and collected her satchel. Too depressed to even see the expo now. Might as well just head on back. Try to rethink my strategy for acquiring candidates. She was about to walk until she overheard something. It sounded like Corporal Yamamoto was arguing with someone around the corner. She couldn't see her since a tall hedge was blocking the view. Curious, the doctor quietly walked closer and poked her head around the corner. Corporal Yamamoto was standing in front of a shorter, Asian-American boy. The doctor guessed he must have been in his late teens. It seemed the corporal was angry with the younger man if her posture and tone of voice was any indication. Dr. Hatsum knew she shouldn't eavesdrop on others' private affairs, but she couldn't help but be a little nosy. Was this the friend Yamamoto had mentioned? She remained hidden, quietly listening in. What was the worst that could happen? Moments prior, Izuku was walking out of Andoria Convention Center's East Gate. Taking the shortest route, he walked down the path leading through the garden square. The recruitment office would then be directly across the street. He pulled out his phone to text Peggy in case she was looking for him, but was confused to see her walking out from a perpendicular sidewalk up ahead. Peg-chan? What are you doing out here? Izuku asked, bemused. Restrooms are that way. He pointed back to the main building. Izuku-in? Peggy was mildly surprised to see Izuku outside. She was sure he'd be enraptured with the robotics exhibit long enough for her to sneak back in unnoticed. Did he get concerned and start looking for her? I could ask the same for you. I asked first. Izuku retorted. Peggy sighed, seeing no point in trying to lie. I was just talking to a friend from work. No big deal. Izuku pet a brow. The same one who gave you the passes? Yeah. She nodded. You could have just told me. You didn't have to lie. Izuku lightly scolded. I know. I apologize. Peggy replied, hanging her head low. Should have been forthcoming. Did they already leave? Yeah. It was a brief conversation, honestly. Peggy replied. Had to be important for you to ditch me like that. He deadpanned. It's confidential. Can't get into it. Peggy rubbed her neck apologetically. Hope you can understand. Izuku nodded. Although he didn't approve of her lying, he understood Peg-chan was in the military and couldn't share sensitive information with others, including close friends and family. So, what are you doing out here? Come to look for me? Peggy questioned. Well, Izuku fidgeted slightly, knowing she wouldn't be happy. He spotted a recruitment center across the street. Peggy was indeed not pleased by his response, and directed a stern frown toward her friend. Izuku-an, she growled, you were already denied. I'll try out for the Army. Or the Navy. National Guard. Heck, even the Coast Guard. Their physical requirements aren't as intense. Izuku stated. I won't know if I don't try, right? Izuku-an, I've been really working hard, Peg-chan. Exercising and dieting. I just need another chance. Izuku argued. Izuku, just stop. She shouted, startling her friend. Taking a moment to collect herself, she sighed heavily and shook her head. I'm sorry, Izuku-an. I'm your friend, so I won't lie, you really should reevaluate your options. Izuku felt his heart drop at that response. He knew Peg-chan was never thrilled about him wanting to join the military, but she had always been supportive regardless. Until now, that is. Unbeknownst to the childhood friends, Dr. Hatsum was now observing them from behind a large hedge. Peggy laid a supportive hand on his shoulder. You're a brilliant guy, Izuku-an. You can do so much more with your life. You can go to college. Become a teacher. Study meta abilities. Anything. You're just not cut out for the military. Izuku lowered his head, a shadow casting over his eyes. I want to enlist, Peg-chan. Izuku-an, you don't have to join because of me. You can do whatever you want. She further urged. I'm not joining because you did. Izuku lifted his head to reveal his determined gaze. People are scared, Peg-chan. You know it and I know it. I can't just pretend that everything is okay. Society is edging closer to collapse. I need to try and help. People need someone who's at least willing to help them these days. Dr. Hatsum pet a brow in intrigue. Oh? Izuku-an, that's all well and good, but you're not fit for service. For any branch. Besides, even if you were somehow accepted, with your conditions you'll die in boot camp. Peggy strongly retorted. Support this. That's a shame, but it doesn't change my decision. Izuku affirmed. Peggy grabbed Izuku by his jacket and pulled him closer, her expression contorting into frustration. What are you trying to prove? Who cares what JRKS like Zack say? Or anyone else for that matter. You don't need to prove anything to them. Follow your own dreams, Izuku. Why you got it wrong? It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about doing what is right, he loudly declared. At the expense of your life? Even if you die without ever even stepping foot on the battlefield? Without saving anyone? What kind of hero is that? Peggy demanded. Izuku narrowed his gaze. A hero doesn't have to win, Peg-chan, they inspire. Peggy was momentarily surprised by that reply. Izuku continued. There are people risking their lives, Peg-chan. It doesn't matter if I'm small or frail, I have no right to do any less than them. It's not about me, and that's what you don't understand. Dr. Hatsum lightly gasped as her eyes widened. The conviction in his words and in his expression. Who is this kid? Peggy loosened her grip and let go of Izuku, exhaling deeply. I can't convince you, can I? No. He shook his head. So dim and stubborn. She looked at her friend with a small feigned smile. Try not to do anything stupid, okay? Izuku chuckled lightly. I'll try not to. Thank you, Peg-chan. I'll be by the mech exhibits. Peggy walked forward, stuffing her hands in her jacket pockets. When you're done, come find me. Text me if you can't. I will. He nodded. With that, the two childhood friends parted ways as Peggy headed back to the convention center as Izuku proceeded down the path. Peggy briefly glanced back at Izuku with a worried expression and then continued forward with a heavy heart. Izuku-an, you stubborn fool, why don't you understand? Peggy lamented. You're better off at home where I know you're safe. As Izuku passed by, Dr. Hatsum stepped out from behind the hedge with her eyes locked onto him. A small smirk graced her face as she started following the young boy to the recruitment office. Mizudafu, Japan, April 2196. With a couple clicks, a door lock was disengaged and a door was pushed open. Midoriya stepped into the dark room with an unconscious Yagi limply dangling from his right shoulder. His shield case was on his back with his yellow satchel hanging from his left shoulder. Using his free hand, he flipped a switch on the wall to turn on the main overhead light. The room was revealed to be a small studio apartment. There was a small organized desk with paper, folders, writing tools, and a computer setup. There was a 3-tiered bookshelf full of books off to the side. In addition, there was a living room area connected to a small kitchen with a full-sized bed in the far corner and 2 more doors, one for a small closet and the other for the bathroom. Overall, it was a simple living space. Midoriya approached the living room area and carefully laid Yagi down on his small couch, his feet dangling off the side. He took off his case and rested it by Yagi while placing his satchel on his work desk. He sighed heavily while rubbing the back of his head. What a day! Today had certainly been a doozy. He was grateful that none of the other building's tenants had seen him carry All Might to his room. That would have been awkward to explain. Of course, Midoriya suspected that S.H.I.E.L.D. had undercover agents living in the complex, so the cat may already be out of the bag for all he knew. Midoriya leaned down to check All Might's pulse, and was relieved to know it was normal. Seemed the guy had truly passed out from shock. Guess I can't blame him. I'd probably be stunned too if I were in his shoes. Midoriya mused. Should I call Coulson on this? No, I don't want to risk giving away All Might's secret if they don't already know. Hopefully he wakes up soon. He stepped into the kitchen. Guess I'll try to fix some tea till he wakes up. Oh wait, he doesn't have a stomach. Can he even drink tea? As Midoriya fiddled around in the kitchen, Yagi groaned as consciousness returned. His eyes fluttered open as his bleary vision steadily refocused to a plain, eggshell-white ceiling. Seeing that he was in an unfamiliar place, Yagi immediately sat up from the couch and looked around alert. What happened? Where am I? Easy there, All Might. Midoriya calmly said, stepping out of the kitchen. It's all right. It's just me. Yagi was momentarily confused as to why he was here until it suddenly occurred to him. He lowered his head into his palms and groaned in embarrassment. I passed out, didn't I? Yeah. Midoriya lightly chortled. Brought you to my apartment since it was already close by. By the way, your skinny form was a bit heavier than I expected. Not that I'm calling you overweight or anything. He frantically waved, worried his words may be misinterpreted. Yagi looked at Midoriya apologetically. Apologies. I didn't mean to inconvenience you. Don't sweat over it. Midoriya looked at All Might in mild concern. Are you feeling okay? I was worried you might have lost too much blood or something. Why, I'm fine now. Yagi briefly looked around the room. He took note of the brown circular case by his feet. May I? Midoriya smiled and nodded. Go ahead. Try to resist throwing it though. He teased. It's not a toy. Yagi chuckled a bit as he unzipped the case, pulling out the American-themed disc. He flipped it forward and back and stared in wonder. The sound it made was unique. It was reminiscent of a tuning fork. This is really light, yet it's so strong. All Might mused. History had never divulged what Cap's shield was made of. One of the biggest mysteries in pro-hero history that not even the biggest hero support companies were able to answer. Curious, Yagi figured there'd be no harm in asking, what's this thing made of? Adamantium vibranium alloy. Yagi blinked, dumbfounded. They're uber-rare metals. Midoriya explained. Super strong and lightweight. Guess I wouldn't be able to get one then, huh? Yagi joked. Midoriya smiled and shook his head. Nope, she's one of a kind. How's it feel to hold it? It feels... Yagi paused as he admired the symbol of the first hero. He couldn't believe he was actually holding it. Like it should be in a museum. Midoriya chuckled. That's a fair point. Yagi placed the shield down by his feet, leaning it against the couch. Gotta say, he looked around, I certainly wasn't expecting Captain America to live in a studio. Apartment. Midoriya shrugged. I prefer it actually. Helps me keep a minimalist mindset. Do you want any water? I'd offer tea, but I wasn't sure with your condition and all. Tea is fine actually. Yagi assured. It's just coffee and most solid foods I can't really consume anymore. Midoriya nodded and walked back into the kitchen. As the verdette prepared to put on a pot of tea, Yagi's eyes slowly widened in realization. This was real. He was actually talking to the first hero himself, the man he had admired and based his own pro-hero career on. It was so surreal. Talking to an historic figure that should have been dead over a century ago. Over tea no less. He was wondering if overexerting himself against that sludge villain was affecting his mind. He stopped to look at Midoriya. The few written accounts that had survived the Third War described Captain America as an Asian American, Japanese, according to some writings. Of course, nothing was ever officially confirmed, and the truth had remained a mystery. Until now, that is. So, you're really him, huh? You're the Captain America? Yeah. Midoriya glanced back, smiling nervously. Please don't pass out again. But I don't. Yagi stammered in disbelief. How? How are you still alive? Well, that's a long story actually. Some of it I can't really get into. With the tea on, Midoriya stepped away and leaned on the countertop. But the short story is that I got into an altercation, and it resulted in me being frozen in the Arctic. Wait, frozen? Yagi blinked. Shouldn't you be dead then? Midoriya nodded, keeping an even look. Yeah, I should, but I guess fate had other plans. Altercation? Not exactly specific. Yagi racked his brain for any clues based on his past extensive study into Captain America's hero tenure. He had been to many places across the globe. According to history, the last place he had been spotted by the public eye was. Wait, did this happen during your time in Norway? Midoriya glanced back with a mildly surprised look. You know your stuff, huh? Yeah, it was actually. What happened? According to eyewitnesses, Oslo was the last place you were seen before you disappeared. Midoriya lowered his head, shifting uncomfortably. Sorry, I can't really get into that part of it. Maybe another time. Yagi was a bit disappointed. However, out of respect, he didn't pry any further on the matter. After the tea was finished, Midoriya carefully brought it over to the couch and placed it on a small coffee table. As All Might took a sip, he tried to keep a straight face despite the bitterness biting his tongue. Definitely needs work. He inwardly commented. He didn't want to dare call out his hero for making bitter tea. Midoriya noticed as he took a seat in a chair across the table. Sorry if the tea isn't to your liking. Still learning. He chuckled awkwardly. Not commenting, Yagi sat the cup down and looked at the verdette seriously. I've got some questions. I can imagine, Midoriya noted. How much time ya got? Plenty. Can't promise to answer all of them, at least, not yet. But fire away. Midoriya extended his index finger and thumb to mimic a pistol, but then immediately panicked. Oh wait. Ugh, pointing is rude in Japan, right? Sorry about that. No, don't worry about it. Yagi placated, reassuring the verdette. Guess he wasn't lying when he said he grew up in America? But that does beg the question. Why are you in Japan? All Might inquired. Shield, he simply replied. Yagi ped an eyebrow in bewilderment. Shield? He knew they were a counterterrorism intelligence agency headquartered in America. They had influence both nationally and globally, essentially the old American CIA on steroids. He personally knew a few people who worked in high places with them. A couple of them even knew his secret. But what did they have to do with this? He connected the dots and it occurred to him. They're the ones who found you, right? In the Arctic? Midoriya nodded in confirmation. Several months ago, a research crew found me. SHIELD came in and carefully thawed me out, helped me recover while filling me in on my situation. There were many questions running through All Might's head. For starters, why would SHIELD send Cap to Japan? Shouldn't he be back in America? Furthermore, was he telling the truth in his plan to attend UA University? Why did he even want to attend a hero university? Also, how the heck could someone survive in ice for over 150 years? He was curious about what questions to ask until he remembered an important detail from their first encounter. You said you were quirkless. But that doesn't add up. The historical records say Captain America was born with an augmentation-type quirk that enhanced his physical and mental capabilities. That's a lie, Midoriya said flatly, surprising All Might. At least the born with a quirk part. What do you mean by that? Yagi was very intrigued. The higher-ups spun that story because they thought the masses should believe their Sentinel of Liberty was a natural-born hero. But the truth is, I'm not. I wasn't born with any abilities, I was given them. He revealed. Yagi's eyes shot open in shock. What? I know, sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, the idea of a person being given a superpower? Sounds like something straight out of a comic book? Midoriya chuckled ruefully. But it's the truth. It took every ounce of Yagi's self-control to stay silent. Captain America, the man who defied the odds and bested formidable foes with nothing but his strength, wits, sheer determination, and a shield, the one who had started the tradition of pro-heroes wearing costumes, the world's first hero, was born quirkless. How could he be quirkless yet superhuman at the same time? Yagi couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was tempted to interject that he did understand but stopped himself. Now was not the time to reveal that secret. This stays secret between us. Can I trust you, All Might? Midoriya requested. Yagi nodded, determined. Yes. I know how to keep secrets. After all, I have plenty of my own. He dryly noted. I'm a super soldier. Midoriya plainly stated. Yagi blinked and looked at the verdette bewildered. Super soldier? I'll keep it brief. I'm essentially a test subject for a US military project to create artificial meta-users trained to be highly effective soldiers, hence the name, Super Soldier. Yagi's eyes widened in shocked disbelief. He was about to interject that it sounded ludicrous but remembered his own origins and the source of his own power. He remained silent and listened. I wasn't born strong. In fact, I used to be just a small, scrawny sick kid. I was determined to help out in any way I could. Through fate or chance encounter, however you want to spin it, I was selected to be a part of America's top-secret super soldier project. Midoriya explained. Now, this tidbit of information certainly threw Yagi Toshinori for a loop. One of the most muscular, masculine heroes in history was once a frail and scrawny man? The press would have a field day with that information. He couldn't help but feel empathetic toward Midoriya, given his own backstory and current weakened condition. I was given a serum that enhanced not just my physical body, but my mental capacities and psychological traits as well, with a few other side effects. In short, my abilities aren't really considered a quirk as I don't have the genes to classify it that way. That's why I refer to myself as quirkless. Yagi was speechless. Artificial quirks were possible? Now he could understand why the higher-ups at the time were determined to keep Captain America's true origins a secret. He could think of one man in particular that would love to know that superpowers could be manufactured. The atrocities he could have committed with that knowledge. He shook his head at that thought. No, he's gone. I bashed his head in. He won't recover from that. All Might tried to assure himself, but a hint of doubt remained. Hey, All Might. Yagi was snapped out of his musings by Midoriya, who was looking at him in concern. Yeah. You okay? That just? I certainly wasn't expecting that story, is all. Yagi played off. Midoriya nodded and deflated slightly. Never meet your heroes, I guess. He took a sip of his tea, which had cooled down enough, and grimaced. Too bitter. Yagi couldn't help but chuckle. I could teach you how to make a really good pot of tea if you want. Might take you up on that offer sometime. Midoriya smiled. Midoriya took the opportunity to take his failed attempt at tea and dump it down the sink. He prepared glasses of water instead while also reaching into a cabinet to pull out several wrapped bars with no label on them. He unwrapped one to reveal an energy bar, which he promptly consumed. Thanks. As Yagi took the glass, another thought occurred to him. I'm curious about something though. Midoriya took a few gulps of water before unwrapping another energy bar to take a few bites. I can imagine. What's up? On the rooftop, why did you ask me what it means to be a hero? You already knew that for yourself, so why try to ask me? Yagi questioned, curious. He chuckled wryly. Fair question. Midoriya was silent for a moment as he collected his thoughts. When I learned that being a superhero was an actual career in this era, the fanboy in me was stoked. I mean, I was in a world of actual superheroes and supervillains. Straight out of a comic book. I was eager to study them and took down as many notes as I could. He motioned to his desk, which had over a dozen notebooks stacked to the side. After briefly reading and signing Midoriya's 13th book, All Might surmised the other 12 were filled with detailed information about many other pro-heroes and villains as well. He was stunned by how much information regarding their quirks and fighting moves Midoriya was able to record in a relatively short amount of time. Midoriya's expression became downcast. But then I started to notice how commercialized everything was. Heroes constantly trying to one-up each other and the shameless advertising. I dunno, it was pretty disheartening. Because if that's what it takes to be a modern hero, well, I just don't have the stomach for it. Then I heard about you. He smiled. Yagi was intrigued yet remained silent to listen. Though you are popular and have a ton of merchandise, you still put what's important first. You help and rescue people with a fearless smile and unreal strength. You're basically a living Superman. Midoriya exclaimed excitedly. Who? Yagi asked, ping a brow. Midoriya looked at All Might in mild shock that had never heard of the most famous fictional superhero. Guess comics really are dead in this time, PRD. Forget it. Not important. He waved off before continuing. Anyway, with your strength and charisma, and the fact that crime rates dropped to historical lows since your debut, I could see why people called you the symbol of peace. It's who you are. So, I wanted to hear your personal stance on heroism and what it means to you. Yagi turned away in shame. I let you down, didn't I? Well, yeah, but don't take it too hard. I understand why you felt that way. Midoriya reassured. What with your 3-hour limit and that injury and all? I get you were just trying to protect a quirkless boy with a half-baked dream. Despite Midoriya's consolation, Yagi still didn't feel much better. No, it was wrong either way. Even if you weren't Cap and were just a quirkless boy, it wasn't right for me to say those things to you. He countered. Power doesn't make a hero. All Might then looked back at Cap seriously. Be honest with me. His gaze turned serious. After our talk on the roof, were you considering giving up? He needed to know even if the response pained him to his core. Midoriya was momentarily silent as he pondered the question. It was certainly discouraging. I won't lie. But give up? I don't think I could even if I tried. Yagi's eyes widened in mild surprise. Besides, there are others that do support me and what I stand for, so it's not like I would have been completely alone in this. SHIELD. Yeah. At least some people in it. Midoriya remarked. If you're involved with SHIELD, then why are you here in Japan studying for UA Academy? Couldn't they just give you a pro-hero license with their pull in the US government? Yagi inquired further. Well, at first SHIELD was adamant that after I recovered, I was put back in the field in secret. At least the director was. Midoriya answered. In secret? You mean like an underground hero then? Something like that. Midoriya nodded. They don't want the world to know that I'm still alive nor my true origins, remember? Right? So, why didn't you accept? Yagi was genuinely curious. Honestly, I wasn't really interested in jumping right back into the fray. He frowned sadly. I mean, I was in a new world. Everything I knew and loved was gone. Also, not sure if I can fully trust SHIELD or not. Midoriya mused. Yagi nodded in understanding. He needed time to grieve, to adjust, make sense. Plus, the idea of just being given a hero license while nearly all the other pros had to work years to earn theirs just didn't sit well with me, the vedette confessed. I'd rather earn it than just be handed one. Yagi could admire Cap's earnest desire to earn a license. Nonetheless, he couldn't help but feel Cap had already earned it with his past exploits. Did the captain not see it that way? Then, they decided on another idea. UA Academy. Yagi realized, starting to connect the dots. Midoriya nodded. It was decided the best way to get me reaccumulated to the world while getting me up to speed on modern heroics was to send me to hero school, with real people all around my age. He answered. UA University is the best hero academy in Japan, possibly in all of Asia. I thought it'd be a great experience to learn from the best of the best and reconnect with my heritage and all. I suppose that makes sense. Wait, how old are you? 22 in July. Yagi was surprised. So young. All the surviving records said he was in his early 30s. Did the US government lie about that too? Figures. So, yeah, that's why I'm here. Izuku smiled sheepishly. It'd be a nice way to help me readjust to the world while also giving me time to catch up on everything and the time to retrain my body. Train. Yagi pet a brow ridge, confused. You seem fit already though? Izuku rubbed his neck in a sheepish manner. Yeah, my muscles are still atrophied from being on ice for so long. Yagi's eyes slightly widened as an idea occurred to him. He was planning on enrolling as a UA faculty member in hopes of finding a worthy successor to One for All. But sitting in front of him was the legendary hero himself, Captain America. He was also young and a UA student hopeful. He'd be the perfect candidate. The prospect of Captain America himself being the next wielder of One for All really excited Yagi Toshinori. Then, Yagi stopped that train of thought, remembering Midoriya's reasons for attending UA Academy. Honestly, I wasn't really interested in jumping right back into the fray. I mean, I was in a new world. Everything I knew and loved was gone. He has so much on his plate right now. It wouldn't be fair to spring something as big as One for All on him. He thought and came up with another idea. But that doesn't mean I can't help him. I have an idea then. Perhaps I can help train you? Yagi eagerly suggested. Get your body back into fighting shape. Midoriya blinked, taken off guard by the offer. You do that? I mean, you're a busy hero, so I wouldn't want to interfere with your work. Nonsense. Yagi waved off. Between you and me, I'm planning on joining UA as a teacher next semester, so I'm in town for quite a while getting ready for it. Really? Is that why you were in Mizudafu today instead of your agency back in Tokyo? Midoriya asked. Yeah, partially. Yagi replied. I can get into that another time. But if you're willing, I'd be more than happy to help you. Midoriya thought about it and the idea certainly appealed to him. How many people could say they received training from the world's #1 hero? But he did have his studies to keep in mind. That sounds great, but I do have my studies at the local college. Midoriya mentioned. Could we work our schedule around that? Of course. Actually, I have a plan in mind that takes all of that into consideration. Yagi explained. After all, if you're going to get into UA, you'll have to pass the written and practical exams. Midoriya nodded in satisfaction, not seeing any reason to decline. Well. He stood up and stretched his hand out. I certainly won't turn down help from the #1 pro if he's willingly offering it. Yagi stood up and shook Midoriya's hand in return. You won't be disappointed, Cap. Midoriya Izuku, he introduced. Pleased to meet you, All Might. Yagi smiled, excited to finally know the captain's real name. Yagi Toshinori. The pleasure's all mine. Nearly an hour later, Yagi stepped out of the Ender Apartments complex and onto the sidewalk. Nighttime had arrived as street lamps illuminated the city streets. Can't believe this is all real. He exhaled, still internally trying to come to terms with everything that had happened tonight. I'd better get back soon to at least get a head start on writing up Cap's plan. Yagi pulled out his phone to look at the Notepad app, momentarily studying the info Midoriya had given him on his body specifics and diet. Who would have thought those energy bars he was eating were 3,000 calories each? His metabolism was crazy high. He'd just have to factor that into the plan. He hoped Midoriya would have a sizable food budget though. Yagi then switched to the GPS app. The truck's parked over a few miles away. Maybe I should call a cab? Although I guess a little walking won't hurt. Taking a deep breath of the brisk night air, Yagi walked down the street. However, he didn't make it far before a vehicle suddenly drove up beside him and stopped. Much to his surprise, it was a 1962 Resto Mod, cherry red Chevrolet Corvette convertible with a red cloth roof up, bearing California license plate numbers 381 PC. Yagi's eyes widened as he only knew one person who owned and drove a piece of automotive history like this. The right side window slid down, revealing the driver on the left side and confirming the car was left-hand drive, as well as the identity of the driver. The driver was an American-looking Caucasian man 182 centimeters, 6 feet 0 inches, tall with a muscular build and short brown hair. He wore a black suit with a white button shirt with a silver pennant of an eagle on his jacket and black shades over his eyes. All in all, the man's appearance practically screamed government agent. "Need a lift, stranger?" he asked in fluent Japanese. "You look like you could use one." "Phil." Yagi walked to the car with a small smile. "It's been a while. Hop in." Agent Phil Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. gave a wry smile. "Let's go for a drive, Toshinori." After today's events, Yagi was feeling pretty exhausted. So, Coulson saving him from walking several miles was a welcome relief. Yagi pulled open the door and slid into the passenger seat while internally admitting it felt odd to be riding in a left-hand drive vehicle after so long. That brought up another question in All Might's mind: how was he even allowed to drive this car in Japan? As soon as All Might closed the door, the car jerked forward rapidly enough to leave a skid mark in the pavement. Nevertheless, Agent Coulson stayed under the speed limit. "I thought the whole point of a secret agent was to be inconspicuous," Yagi commented lightheartedly. "Hiding in plain sight," Coulson mentioned. "Nobody would expect a government agent to be driving a flashy sports car." "James Bond?" All Might retorted. Coulson laughed a little. "Only in the movies. I don't even want to guess how you're allowed to drive Lola in Japan." Yagi shook his head. "S.H.I.E.L.D. has its ways." Agent Coulson replied. S.H.I.E.L.D. Yagi suspected there would be more to this ride than two old friends simply catching up and didn't need his old sidekick's quirk to foresee what the crux of this conversation would be about. Deciding to skip the pleasantries, Yagi asked, "Not that I'm not happy to see you, but what are you doing here? I haven't seen you in 5 years, not since since your accident." Coulson finished, making Yagi slightly flinch, and then briefly glanced at his passenger. "I'm here on assignment, also looking for any old pro-hero memorabilia I can find. Japan is a treasure trove for those kinds of things." "Still trying to grow your collection, huh?" "Always," Coulson smirked. Yagi lightly chuckled and shook his head. "Coulson, still a hero fanboy." "But we're not here to discuss me or my admittedly impressive hero merchandise collection," Coulson continued, "even though I'd like to." "Young Midoriya," Yagi stated rather than asked. Not sure if young is an accurate description or not, but yes. "I take it you're his overseer then?" "Liaison, to be specific." Coulson came to a stop at a traffic light, allowing pedestrians to cross. Several bystanders openly gawked at the red convertible. It made sense. After all, Coulson's car was over 200 years old. How he was able to acquire such a relic and restomod it, Yagi still had no idea. He didn't give out much, if any, details on Lola's history. "I already promised Midoriya I wouldn't tell a soul of his identity, Phil." Yagi sighed. "You don't have to swear me into secrecy or anything like that. You know me." "I know that." "Not concerned about it." Coulson turned to Yagi with a serious look. "I just want to know what happened today." Yagi didn't respond, only looking at the agent curiously. "We spotted Cap carrying your unconscious body into his apartment, so naturally I'm curious." Coulson elaborated. The traffic light turned green, and Coulson resumed driving down the street. "Wait, you were spying on us?" Yagi slumped his shoulders while placing his right hand on his forehead, exasperated. "Of course you were, forgot who I was talking to." "If they saw Midoriya taking me to his apartment, did they also see my transformation in that street?" "Crap." Yagi inwardly lamented, fearing the entire spy organization would soon know his secret. "It's our business to make sure nothing happens to Cap. If it makes you feel any better, the agents reported only seeing him carrying you, nothing before that. So your identity is safe," Coulson assured. Yagi sighed, feeling a huge weight off his shoulders. "That's good to hear." You're the only one I can trust in your organization. No offense to the director and everyone else. You know Director Fury would die before giving away your secret to anyone. Coulson pensively mentioned. He knows how important it is. I know, it's just well. Yagi wasn't sure how to say how he felt about the enigmatic director without coming off as too aggressive. His secrets have secrets? That's actually a good way of putting it. Yagi admitted. Fury's secrets aside, Coulson switched topics away from his boss and friend. Cap went off his usual route today and our undercover agents lost track of him. Then the whole thing with the sludge villain went down. He glanced over to Yagi, pulling his shades off. He knows your secret, doesn't he? Yagi sighed. He knows I'm All Might, yes? If it isn't too much trouble, can you please share what happened today, Toshinori? How did you and Midoriya meet? Coulson asked politely. Yagi spent the next several minutes explaining to Coulson the circumstances behind his encounter with Midoriya. Starting from his pursuit of the sludge villain, saving Midoriya from said criminal, Midoriya hitching a ride on his leg, his secret being revealed on the rooftop, how the villain escaped, and finally witnessing Midoriya's heroic actions against the sludge villain. He then explained how his second meetup with Midoriya unfolded, and finally learned the legendary captain's true identity. Coulson had taken the story in stride, but his visage darkened upon hearing how Midoriya was almost killed by the sludge villain. It seemed he would need to have a long, unpleasant discussion with those Level 3 agents tasked with watching Cap. As soon as Yagi finished, the Level 7 agent nodded. I see. Explains why Cap didn't want to give details earlier. He didn't want to risk giving away your identity and condition. I suppose I should let him know that at least you and the director know of my condition and there's no need to hide it from you. Yagi noted. Thank you, Toshinori. I assure you that today's blunder on our end won't happen again. I'll make sure of it. Coulson's tone was dead serious, making Yagi a tad nervous. He hoped Coulson wouldn't be too hard on whatever agents were tasked with overseeing Cap. Also, did you really pass out? Coulson teased. Yagi visibly sweated. Let's not dwell on that. He shouted in embarrassment. From there, Yagi mentioned he would be helping Midoriya train to get him in shape for UA University's entrance exam. In addition, he pointed out Midoriya's food budget would likely need to be increased to compensate for the extra food he'd be consuming. Coulson was very understanding of it all. After receiving directions from Yagi, they finally arrived at the location of his parked white pickup truck. Thanks again for the lift, Phil, Yagi said while climbing out of the car. Anytime. One more thing, Toshinori, you were planning to make him your successor, weren't you? Coulson inquired seriously. Yagi lightly gasped in surprise. How did you? Wasn't hard to figure out, and honestly, I can't blame you for considering him. Did you ask him? No. Yagi shook his head. It wouldn't be right. Not now. Keep in mind, your time is running out. I don't think I need to stress how important the symbol of peace is to society. Yagi remained silent. Of course he knew that. He knew his time as a pro-hero was coming to a close soon. It was the reason he was attending UA next semester in the first place. To find a worthy successor. With that said, don't wait too long to at least ask him. Coulson stated. I'm sure Cap'll understand if you explain everything to him. Yagi did not respond as he lowered his head in rumination. We'll be keeping our distance. Train him however you see fit, just remember though, his studies are also important. Coulson firmly stated. I know that. Good seeing you again, Phil. Yagi closed the door and turned to face his truck. An idea then came to him. By the way, Tsukachi and I ought to catch up sometime. He looked back and was stunned to see Lola and Coulson were already gone. How'd he leave without making a noise? He sighed, mildly frustrated. How does he keep doing that? San Francisco, California, April 2042. Izuka stepped into the military recruitment office and walked through the small lounge area to the front desk. There was a sole recruiter on duty wearing his standard-issue camo combat uniform, sitting at the desk playing solitaire on his desktop. He was simply waiting to clock out and was pleasantly surprised to see someone walking into the office only 15 minutes till closing time. Doing his duty, he stood up and greeted the guest. Welcome to the Andoria Army Recruiting Station. My name is Staff Sergeant Dash. He paused when he finally took notice of Izuku. Izuku remained oblivious to his stare and stepped up to the desk. Good evening, sir. I want to enlist for the army. I've already taken the ASVAB test, and my information should already be on file, if that helps. I see. The recruiter nodded, seeing that his job should be easier. Have you enlisted for any other military branches, son? Izuku frowned. Yes, the Marines. I was rejected. Mind giving me your social security number so that I can bring up your records? The recruiter took a seat back at his desk. After giving the recruiter his information, Izuku's file was brought up on the desktop screen. The staff sergeant made sure not to visibly wince at the boy's poor PFT results. Unfortunately, with his physical and medical conditions, there'd be no way he could be accepted in any military branch. He was about to break the bad news to him until the bell at the door rang, signaling that another person walked in. It had been dead for most of the evening, and now people were starting to walk in so close to closing time? Typical. Welcome to the Andoria Army Recruiting Station. If you could take a seat, I'll be with you. Dash. The recruiter was cut off when the new person, an Asian American woman wearing a lab coat, walked past Izuku and up to the desk. At ease, Staff Sergeant Ted Gray, Dr. Hatsum said while pointing to Izuku. I'm with him. Izuku blinked dumbly. Who was this woman? He didn't know her. He stared at her closely and, aside from her being quite beautiful, something seemed familiar about her. Dr. Hatsum pulled out an ID card from her satchel, handing it to the recruiter. Staff Sergeant Ted Gray's eyes widened slightly as he read it. What was someone with her kind of military clearance doing in his recruiting station? He glanced over to Izuku, who seemed equally confused. If it's all the same with you, Staff Sergeant, I'd like to supervise this young man's physical test. Dr. Hatsum requested. Huh. Izuku was left further dumbfounded. Who is she? According to his records, he's already taken and failed the physical test for the Marine Corps just earlier this week. So, I don't see why Dash. It's the Marines, Staff Sergeant. You know how brutal their physicals are. Doesn't hurt to give this young man another chance, now does it? Dr. Hatsum smiled. Staff Sergeant Gray pondered for a moment and conceded. It was late and there'd likely be no one else coming in tonight anyways. Might as well get it over with now. Fine. He conceded. Opening a drawer, he pulled out a clipboard with some paper to hand to the doctor. There's a room in the back. You can take Mr. Midoriya there. Try to be quick though, doctor, we're going to be closing soon. Taking the clipboard, Dr. Hatsum gave a thumbs up. Thanks, Staff Sergeant. You're the best. She motioned for Izuku to follow her. He complied but was still bewildered over the situation. Dr. Hatsum and Izuku stepped into a room with a treadmill and exercise mats positioned across the floor and U.S. Army motivation posters on the white walls. All right, Mr. Midoriya, or do you prefer Midoriya-san? Dr. Hatsum asked, a Japanese accent present in her voice. Izuku is fine. He replied. You from around here, Izuku? Well, I was born in Japan. But my mom and I moved to Fresno when I was 3. Izuku explained. I am an American citizen, if you're wondering. Good thing you guys moved from Japan when you did. Dr. Hatsum grimly thought before refocusing. Sorry if I sound rude, but who are you? Izuku asked, confused. Up there at the desk you acted like you knew me. But I don't believe I've ever met you. Oh, silly me. Where are my manners? She laughed awkwardly. Composing herself, she held out her hand. Dr. Teruko Hatsum. Izuku shook her hand. Izuku Midoriya. Pleasure to meet you, doctor. He paused when he noticed, behind her glasses, 3 light yellow rings in Dr. Hatsum's eyes around her green irises. He didn't want to be insensitive, but he figured it wouldn't hurt to ask. Doctor, what are those circles in your eyes? Oh, it's part of my meta ability. She adopted an expression of slight concern. Does this bother you? No. I think it's fascinating. Izuku asserted, grinning. If you don't mind, could you tell me what your ability is? Dr. Hatsum closed her eyes and grinned proudly. I call it micro-insight. It allows me to zoom in on objects at the microscopic level and provides me a solid understanding of that object's inner workings, whether it's organic or not. Pretty cool, right? Opening her eyes, she was taken aback to see Izuku briskly scribbling notes down in a notebook. Fascinating, a meta ability like that is perfect for the science field. I wonder what the limit is on how far you can zoom in on something. How long can you zoom in? Does it cause eye strain if you use it too long? How much knowledge do you gain from the object? Do you acquire more insight the longer you look at it? Is it possible to gain absolute knowledge on it? He continued to murmur. Dr. Hatsum blinked twice, sweat dropping. Whoa, this kid sure is analytical. I'd be impressed if it wasn't kind of creepy. Also, where'd he get that notebook? She internally mused. Izuku suddenly gasped, as his eyes widened in realization. Wait, hold on, you're the Dr. Teruko Hatsum? You've heard of me? She pet an eyebrow. Have I? His eyes sparkled in amazement. You're one of the world's most renowned scientists when it comes to the study and understanding of meta abilities. I've read both volumes of your book. I'm actually getting started on volume 3 soon. And you, understand it? She was definitely surprised that a teen was able to understand her writings. It certainly wasn't directed at the average reader. Of course. You've proven that not all meta abilities are the same even if they share similarities. They're unique to each individual. And each ability stems from a quirk factor, as you dubbed it, encoded in a person's genes. It's very fascinating stuff. He exclaimed excitedly. I can't believe I'm actually meeting you in the flesh. He then groaned and face-bombed in frustration. Shoot, if only I brought my books for you to sign. Putting aside his muttering, Dr. Hatsum was impressed by Izuku's intellect. She glanced at Izuku's notebook in curiosity. Are those your notes on meta abilities? When Izuku nodded, she asked, Mind if I take a look? Sure. Nothing too special though. I just like to take notes on them since it's a hobby of mine. Izuku commented while handing her his notes. Dr. Hatsum flipped through the notebook and was stupefied. He had pages dedicated to different people detailing their meta abilities' strengths and weaknesses and how they could be implemented. The latest page was a quick full-body sketch of her with notes of her own meta ability and its practical uses listed by it. She was amazed as some of her own colleagues couldn't write notes this detailed. And he only did this as a hobby. Not gonna lie, this is some impressive stuff, kid. She stated, handing the notebook back to Izuku. I'd kill to have an assistant like you. He blushed and rubbed the back of his neck from the unexpected praise. Oh, thanks. That means a lot coming from you. He stammered bashfully. Oh. Hatsum's eyes widened. Right. The exercises. Let's get started so the staff sergeant can come home soon, yeah? Izuku nodded in determination. Right. From there, Dr. Hatsum gave Izuku the Army's physical fitness test, which consisted of the following exercises: 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, and a 2-mile timed run. Applicants had to pass with at least a score of 60 on each event and overall score of at least 180 points. The ruby-haired doctor didn't think it was too big of a deal. After all, Izuku was young. Surely he could do these exercises in a timely fashion even if he was on the scrawny side. 15 minutes later, Dr. Hatsum was left speechless. To say Izuku did badly would be an understatement. He could barely do 10 push-ups and sit-ups and was forced to stop in the middle of his run on the treadmill to take multiple puffs from his inhaler. She tailed up his score and visibly winced. 70 overall. This kid shouldn't be anywhere near the military. His asthma alone is a big disqualifier. And yet, she glanced up from his clipboard to see him leaning down with his hands on his knees, panting hard and sweating heavily. There are people risking their lives, Peg-chan. It doesn't matter if I'm small or frail, I have no right to do any less than them. It's not about me, and that's what you don't understand. Finding a couple folding chairs off to the side, Dr. Hatsum placed them in the center of the room. Izuku took a seat as Dr. Hatsum sat across from him with her legs crossed and looking at the clipboard. I failed, didn't I? Izuku said, sounding disheartened. Yep. Badly. Dr. Hatsum saw no point in sugarcoating it. Honestly, I didn't think it was possible for someone your age to get a score this low. So, congrats on surprising me. Oh. Izuku lowered his head in disappointment. Dr. Hatsum lowered the clipboard and looked Izuku straight in the eye. Tell me why. Huh. Izuku looked back at her. Why do you want to enlist so badly? She elaborated. To be frank, you don't belong in the military, like at all. So what is it? Family tradition? Pride? Do you just want to kill meta-terrorists or something? Izuku was momentarily taken aback and quickly responded, no. I don't want to kill anyone. Hatsum pet a brow, bemused. You want to join the military and you're not prepared to kill? Izuku shook his head. I didn't say that. I will if there's no other option, but I would just prefer not to. I want to save and protect people like a hero should. A hero? Yeah. Izuku smiled wistfully. It may sound idealistic and silly to some, but I think the coolest and noblest thing a person can do is risk their lives to save others, wanting nothing in return. He clenched his fist. I know I'm weak and frail, but I'm determined to help in any way I can. Dr. Hatsum grinned widely, barely able to contain her excitement. This kid. She closed her eyes and looked away, keeping her composure. You're right. That is pretty idealistic and old-fashioned if I'm being honest. But, she turned her gaze back to him, people these days may just need a little bit of old-fashioned heroism. Wouldn't you say? Huh. Izuku was unsure of what to make of her statement at first but nodded in agreement. Yeah. I can offer you a chance. However, she reached into her satchel bag and pulled out several papers. It's on the condition that you join this program. Izuku took the papers and quickly looked over them. From what he could gather, these were waiver and consent forms to participate in a military project. MP? He couldn't find the words for the acronym anywhere on the pages. You're not 18 yet, right? No. I will be in July. I already have my father's consent though. He doesn't care either way. He shrugged nonchalantly. Dr. Hatsum nodded. Her intuition told her there was a story there but opted not to pry. Maybe another time. Okay, just have him sign this and fax or email it here. She handed Izuku a detailed form for parental consent. Just know that if you are brought on board, you'll be sworn into secrecy. Dr. Hatsum explained, sounding serious. This is a very important project and, I won't lie, we need worthy and willing candidates badly. I wonder what this is for exactly? Izuku internally wondered. It sounds like a big deal. Is this supposed to be dangerous or something? I can't give you more details until all your paperwork is signed and you're sworn in. But honestly, kid, this is gonna be your only chance to get enlisted. So, if you're willing to dash, I'll do it. Izuku quickly responded, adopting a determined expression. Dr. Hatsum smirked. No hesitation. I like you, kid. Izuku spent the next few minutes signing the papers before handing them back to Hatsum, who placed them in her bag. Once all your paperwork goes through, you'll get an acceptance letter in the mail. It'll detail the time and place for us to meet up again. Dr. Hatsum explained as she stood up. Get you sworn in and all that jazz. Izuku was trying to keep his composure but couldn't hold back a few tears. Thank you, Dr. Hatsum. I promise. I won't let you down. Don't thank me just yet, kid, she shot him a roguish smirk. You haven't entered the crucible yet. The what? Izuku blinked in bewilderment. But in any case, she smiled, welcome to the army, soldier. Izuku felt a sudden rush of emotions at that sentence. He couldn't contain the bright smile from his face and the waterworks flowing down it. He had accomplished the first step toward his goal. Mizudafu, Japan, April 2196. It was breaking dawn at Takoba Municipal Beach Park, 4:45 a.m., to be exact. The sun's yellow rays peeked over the eastern horizon across the ocean, providing a magnificent orange sheet of gleam against the blue darkness of the concrete jungle. The waves crashed against the sandy beach, depositing several empty metal soda cans. The cans, however, were lost amongst the mountains of garbage and scrap piled across the coastline. It was essentially a scrapyard with an oceanfront view. Yagi Tashinori pulled up in his white pickup truck and parked in front of the beach. He stepped out wearing baggy black sweatpants, a loose blue shirt, and white shoes with a black backpack slung over his shoulder. Looking out at the heaps of junk, he whistled in amazement. The pictures online didn't do the scale of the garbage on this beach any justice. Yes, this will do splendidly for Cap's training. He nodded in satisfaction. He proceeded down the sidewalk toward the stairway that went down to the beach and was surprised to already find Midoriya by the stairs doing military-style push-ups. I mean young Midoriya? He corrected himself, not wanting to risk blowing Midoriya's identity. "Good morning, Yagi-san." Midoriya replied in English, finishing a few more push-ups before jumping to his feet. He wore a black sleeveless workout shirt with the U.S. Army logo in the center, dark green sweatpants, and red work boots with black laces and heels. A pair of dog tags hung around his neck. To Yagi's perspective, Midoriya's muscles appeared to be fairly well-toned even though he was technically experiencing muscle atrophy. He could only imagine what he'd look like after he had gotten back in shape. "Please, Toshinori is fine. You're certainly early. Meet-up time is 5 o'clock. Yagi pointed out, replying in English as well. He shook his head and smirked. "U.S. Army rule, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. I got here at 4:30 though and decided to do some light workouts till you arrived." Yagi nodded in approval at Midoriya's punctuality. "Well, glad to know I won't have to worry about you being late then." He chuckled. Yagi and Midoriya walked together down the seawall's stairway to the beach. Next to the stairway was a small ramp for vehicles to get on the beach, not that it was currently in use. "What is this place, by the way?" Midoriya looked around in shocked disgust at the garbage mounds. Did the city convert this beach into a landfill or something? 2 days had passed since his encounter with All Might. After agreeing to let All Might train him, they agreed to meet at this beach early on Saturday morning. At the time, Midoriya assumed he would be doing beach workouts and swimming. So, he was naturally taken aback to see mountains of garbage when he first arrived here. "This is Takoba Municipal Beach Park." Yagi answered. "From my research, it used to be a beautiful place. But over the last few years, it's become a total mess." "How come?" Midoriya pet a brow in bemusement. Stepping onto the sand, Midoriya followed Yagi through a path in between the trash heaps, walking closer to the coastline. "From my understanding, the ocean currents wash up anything dropped in the water within 100 miles off coast to this specific area of the beach." Yagi continued. "Unfortunately, people take advantage of that fact and illegally dump their trash here. Which further compounds the problem," Midoriya realized. "I'm confused though." He looked around, shocked by the wide variety of trash present. There were far more than just standard everyday trash items. There was a plethora of junky appliances such as AC units, water heaters, fridges, microwaves, stoves, etc. Much to his shock, there were also a few abandoned vehicles too, and was that a freaking bulldozer hidden under that pile? How come the city hasn't tried to clean this place up? Or even any of the local hero agencies? The Verdette inquired. "I mean, this would be a great community service project. The city doesn't feel it's their responsibility to spend public funds on a massive cleanup project like this." Yagi frowned slightly. As for the hero agencies, well, most pros these days are focused on showing off and catching flashy villains. Because of that, projects like these go mostly unnoticed or flat-out ignored. Midoriya frowned at that, feeling annoyed. Right, makes sense. Not really much money or any glory to gain from doing a massive cleanup project like this. He understood pros needed to be paid like anyone else, but the criteria for earning higher wages was really bugging Midoriya. Catching criminals wasn't the only thing that mattered in heroism, after all. All Might's body expanded into his muscle form, his clothes fitting him perfectly. Until today, that is. Your mission, soldier, is to clean up the beach and restore the coastline to its former glory. He placed his hand atop a nearby industrial fridge and pushed down, easily crushing it like a soda can. The sun's early morning rays shone through the opening in the heap. "That'll be your first step into becoming a modern hero, Captain." "I get it." Midoriya looked around at the landfill in realization. "Moving all the heavy debris and garbage will help re-strengthen my muscles. It'll also be great community service too. He smiled. All Might smirked and gave him a thumbs up. Exactly. You'll get more out of this than just lifting weights in a gym. Real-world muscle growth. Community service is very important too. Good to get back to the basics of heroism, even if it is kind of boring. Still, with just me, this won't be an easy mission. Midoriya pointed out. I've got my work cut out for me. Yes, but you want to get into UA University, right, Cap? Well, UA has the toughest hero course to get into. You'll need to be at your absolute best in order to stand out. Right? Midoriya gained a determined look. I've missed so much time already. I'll have to work so much harder than anyone else, and I've only got 10 months until the entrance exam. Not to worry, Cap. All Might pulled out sheets of paper from his pocket. I've got you covered with my aim to pass, American Dream Plan. Follow this to the letter and the beach will be cleaned up just in time. Midoriya took the paper and quickly read over the proposed plan and, needless to say, he was quite impressed. All Might had put a lot of thought and consideration into it. He had meticulously scheduled his college and study time, proper diet and mealtime, time working on the beach, and reserving a recovery day on Sunday every week. Wow, you even got my sleep scheduled too. He noted. Nice work. Thank you. Also, no offense, but your Japanese is shaky at best. For now on, you and I will only be conversing in Japanese going forward. All Might placed his hands on his hips. After all, the best way to learn a language is to be constantly immersed in it. Midoriya nodded in understanding. He was in Japan, so if he was going to live here long-term, he needed to speak and write the language like it was second nature. The best way to do that was to speak it constantly. Right? Understood. He replied in Japanese. I won't lie, this is going to be super hard. I may not need to ask this, but I will anyway. Are you up to it? All Might asked in Japanese. A confident smirk grew on Midoriya's face. I was in the army, All Might. Practically live on plans like these. I got this. He clenched his fist. All Might nodded in satisfaction and smiled brightly. Well then, let's get started. Later in the morning, Midoriya was hard at work in his first step to clean Takoba Municipal Beach Park. He pulled at ropes that were wrapped around the base of a large industrial refrigerator before squatting down and sliding his arms through the rope loops and tightening them against his shoulders. With a deep breath, he pulled hard against the ropes. All Might, while in his muscle form, watched Midoriya drag the refrigerator nearly 50 meters across the sandy beach as he casually sat atop it. Reaching the seawall with several grunts of exertion, Midoriya pulled the fridge up the concrete rampway and to the street at the back of All Might's truck before stopping. The ropes went slack as he fell to a knee, breathing heavily with sweat dripping down his face. All Might jumped off the fridge and clicked a stopwatch in his left hand. 2 minutes and 35 seconds. 10 seconds slower than your last run. He informed while glancing over at the multiple items stacked by his truck that included another fridge, several industrial AC units, and a couple stoves. Still, he's doing very well for someone experiencing atrophy. Well, he panted, extra 600 pounds, with you sitting on top. 274 kilograms, 604 pounds, Yagi corrected using the metric system, and I've actually lost weight. I'm down to 255 kilos these days, 562 pounds, in this form at least. Midoriya's sweat dropped. Right, much better. Anyways, All Might started neatly stacking the items into the back of his truck. I'll haul these items off for proper disposal. You take a 10-minute break and resume carrying trash to this spot until I get back. Sound good? Yes, sir. Midoriya straightened up and gave a salute. All Might laughed heartily at that response. After loading up his truck and making sure there was no one around, he reverted back to his skinny form and drove away. Midoriya walked to the top of the stairway, taking a moment to gaze at the mountains of trash that remained. Despite the 2 hours of hard labor, he hadn't made a dent in it. Instead of getting discouraged, Midoriya clenched his fists and adopted a resolute expression. The most worthwhile things in life are always the hardest. I'll finish cleaning this beach with time to spare. With that resolution, Midoriya Izuku rushed down the steps to get back to work, fully motivated to accomplish his goal.